Here, you read this one, Jason.
Okay. This is it. This is the winner right here. This is happening. 1, 5, 5. 1, 5, 5. There we go. See what I'm talking about? Roger just never had it in him. It's the problem. He's getting older. One. Oh. I think it was 864. 864. Yeah.
Tell you what, pick any T-shirt. All right, let's do another one here.
You bet. Okay, here we go. Oh, you do it.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, I want you to do it. I want to feel the presence. There we go. Here it is. Not too far from the other one. 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, and 5. Okay. Go ahead, Roger. One more.
That didn't work out good.
Yeah.
The average stroke of lightning is 6 to 10 miles long. You are always in danger from approaching storms, even with clear skies overhead. The Earth receives more than 8 million lightning strikes per day. This number is increasing with global warming. Any storm within 8 miles can reach you with a lightning strike. Squall lines are moving storm fronts that can be hundreds of miles in length and move at speeds of 50 miles per hour. Tornadoes develop quickly and without warning in small areas of a squall line as it moves. Nimbus 4. Get yours before the storm.
I'm just going to start calling out numbers. 6, 4, 2. 818 is what I said. I think that'll count. All right, yes, there it is.
Oh, we'll give a 2,000 chases
We're
to
gonna-
Tim Marshall.
All right, this is it. Here it is. 2,000 tornado chases with Tim Marshall. And all of them occurred on the same day. Freaking weird. There you go. Congratulations. You bet, for having the right number. All right, here we go.
Well, okay, we're ready to go. We're ready to rock and roll here. So it's my pleasure to introduce the gentleman who's just been talking to you, if you don't know him. Dr. Jason Pearsoff. He is a medical doctor from the Denver area, and you are a family practice doc. Is that right, or no? Not even close.
Okay, but no, I'm an internist.
Internist, yes.
Hospital medicine doctor. The best kind of doctors you'll never want to see.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, you're at the University of Colorado Hospital, right?
Great.
Yeah, excellent. Great. So without further ado, Jason, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much. It's good to be here today in Norman, Oklahoma. This is awesome being here. I have not been actually in Norman for several years because I don't like chasing through Norman. I'm sorry for those of you who live here. It's a tough place to chase, but it's great to come and see everyone here. So today we're going to talk about that we have cows, and you'll see that that's somewhat an overinflated title because we're not going to spend much time talking about bovine physiology today, but we will talk about patterns of severe weather injury and a little bit of scientific detail. And I want to acknowledge my family on the left and my other family on the right. My wife and kids have always been very supportive of my storm chasing. And then that's my chasing crew right there, shouting out to the peeps up in Canada who I miss so much, and some of the guys on the East Coast who are right now sitting through a pretty nasty storm out there. I feel really badly for them, having to sit there in front of, their computers and their fireplaces. Actually, it sounds pretty damn good, actually. All right. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to kind of go through the different, and the reason I'm standing down here is because I want to be at the same height as all of you sitting. I want to be, that way I feel like I'm among you, is what it is. No, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about different patterns of severe weather injury and some of the science behind that, which I found actually really fascinating. So we're going to talk about what the effects that are produced by lightning when they cause injury. We're going to talk about when hail hits. We'll talk about tornadic damage. And then we'll talk about the soil that the tornadoes stir up. And then if we have time, we'll come back to having cows. So that's what that's the overall agenda for the day. All right, I want to take a moment to tell you that sometimes lightning injury comes in different sizes, and there's lots of different mechanisms by which this occurs. I think you guys have had a banner lightning storm year, I think pretty much. I think 1.5 feet measured at Norman this year so far. So we'll kind of talk about the different patterns of lightning injury for a moment. First of all, I want you all to be chronophiliacs. Chronophiliacs are those who love the sound of thunder and seeing lightning. But I do want to tell you that if you are a standard American citizen, not one of us who sits there in the middle of a storm with our metal tripods, taking pictures of the lightning, if you are just a standard American enjoying a standard day out during thunderstorms, you have a 1 in 3,000 lifetime chance of being struck by lightning. I think those odds are actually abysmally good, considering I spent $10 to try and win the Powerball. And so what this tells me is I could have saved the $10 and gotten struck, which is really great. And based on the attendance here and probably at home, for those of you who are watching on the home version, at least a few of you are going to get struck by lightning during your lifetime. Congratulations. And we'll talk about all those nasty things that happen. Now, the mortality rate is fortunately extremely low. In fact, I think more people were probably struck by lightning during this talk than won the tickets that we were just drawing out of there. So the mortality rate is extremely low. However, it's not inconsequential. About 1 in a million chance that you will actually be struck down and killed by lightning. Your lifetime risk individually is about 1 in 35,000, which is a surprisingly high amount. Now, what's interesting is if you look at the number of people who are killed by lightning across the world, you will notice that nobody except Americans goes outside when there's lightning and thunder. Nobody. I actually thought it was striking that England and Wales even had any lightning injury because it's mostly just kind of cool and foggy there. But in fact, in the United States, we have the highest rate of death from that. And we'll talk about the groups that tend to be hit. This is really awesome. Men are 4.5 times more likely to be struck by women. We don't go inside. We are men, damn it. And I know exactly where we're driving. And, shouldn't you come in, honey? No, not going to do it. But don't worry, we get our revenge. Wait for later in the talk. You'll see. You're more likely to be struck if you're 10 to 29, which is a fair chunk of the chasing demographic. And it turns out that at least a quarter of the people who are struck by lightning are doing so in a work capacity, and a quarter of those are inside. I don't know what kind of inside they count that as, but under a tree, I guess, at best. Now, the mechanisms of lightning injury are actually well done by NOAA. They have these great graphics, and for the sake of the matter, we're going to see Jack. Jack is going to die repeatedly for the next few slides, and we'll see how he dies. So here's Jack, and he's getting directly struck by lightning. You'll notice that what was really important is that they actually animated that Jack not only was struck, but then went to the ground. Now, that's a direct strike, okay? And here's Jack underneath the trees, which have grown since the last time he was struck by lightning. And now he's getting what's called a side splash, which is basically when you're next to an object that is directly struck by lightning, you apparently also fall down and wear a red baseball cap. This is at that website, in case you're wondering. And then staying with that theme, we'll talk about step current. This is really awesome. There's Jack next to the tree getting hit by step current and going down. Step currents are fascinating because basically it is a current that is generated by having one foot closer to where the lightning strikes than the other foot. And then because you conduct electricity better than the ground in some circumstances, it then travels up from one leg into an area that I'd rather not be electrocuted, and then out the other leg, and by leg, gentlemen, I mean like the other leg, okay? No. None of that lying about that, all right? So it turns out that based on how far apart your feet are, the voltage could theoretically increase to as much as 1,500 volts, which is pretty good. So what I'm telling you is, if you're standing near a tree in a lightning storm, keep your feet together. That's basically the take-home message, but that's called step current. All right. Then we have, poor Jack is holding on to a metal fence. What? Whoa, what? Poor Jack. You know what, though? You got to say something about Jack. Jack is pretty damn hardy. He's hardy, right? So give it to him for that. But he's here holding on to an fence, getting struck, and then the other form is poor Jack is actually now on a tropical beach trying to get away from his woes when he's hit by an upward streamer from the lightning strike. These are all the different mechanisms that actually occur. There's a couple more, which we'll talk about in a moment. And I want to go back for a moment to the one where Jack is actually being here as a conductive instrument for holding onto the fence. In the medical literature, the first major acknowledgement of this form of injury actually took place in the Lancet in 1903. So this is actually a copy of the original Lancet with the highlighting actually is not from 1903. But I love the Brits. Listen to this. Ready? Both telegraphic and telephonic services may become a, source of danger during great electrical stress in the air. Great electrical stress in the air. That's going to be awesome. And then you should be warned against using the instruments at such a time and certainly when alarming symptoms of a storm manifest themselves in the way just described. The incident suggests unpleasant possibilities in the case of electric wiring in the house, or in this way, atmospheric electricity may possibly be an occasional factor in the origin of an outbreak of a fire. What they said is, stay the hell away from the phone, is what that basically is. Now, interestingly, over the years of giving talks on lightning safety, people have said, that's why I never use my cell phone in a storm. I'm going to just let that hang out there. For those of you who get it, you get it. For those of you who don't, see me after for remedial education. But I also really like the accompanying article, which is over here, The Motor Car Problem, is even funnier. It recommends people carry shotguns in their cars for people to flag people, to injure people who cause vehicular homicide. This was also being proposed at the time. So anyway, if you have excited electrics and you're carrying a shotgun, you're set, man. First world problems. All right, so most fatal strikes are of the first box that we saw with poor Jack, and that is the direct strike are the ones that are most likely to be fatal. Now, when you are actually struck directly, it turns out your body cannot deal with that overwhelming amount of current, and you will actually have a little bit of a flash over where you actually will have current traveling around the outside of the body. This flashover actually may be the thing that causes fatalities in humans. Now, electricity will enter your orifices preferentially because they conduct electricity really well. So here's another unpleasant thought. Your nostrils, your eyeballs, your earballs, your mouth, tongue, and other different orifices throughout your body, which you'll lose control of when the lightning hits you. And it turns out that those portals of entry, while they're harmful, that's not what actually causes people to go into cardiac arrest following a lightning strike. It's the electromagnetic force. The magnetic force causes other electrical currents to form within the body, and that ends up causing the heart to stop. I just think that's really fascinating. Now, for those of you who are really inclined, the other mechanism by which direct strikes end up causing problems, and the types of problems we're talking about, which we'll show in just a few minutes, are permanent neurologic damage. It's from a mechanism called, good luck with this, Jason, electroporation, also known as electric and that's what for those who are keeping track at home, you have to look it up. But basically what happens is, and I'll show you this, this is there you go. This is basically an example of a cell membrane, and what you're seeing in A is the cell membrane is normal, and then what happens as we go through is there's this big pore in there. Well, that pore is what electricity injects into the nerves and muscles, and it ends up causing those cells to die. The longer the cell, the more death is likely, and the longest cells you have in your body actually come from your back all the way to your pinky toe. So your pinky toe is really screwed in the event you're struck by lightning. All right. Believe it or not, ball lightning can also cause harm, which is fascinating to me because, talk about not being prepared for anything. All right, not being prepared for anything is being struck by ball lightning. It's low energy, but it causes less issues. All right, now, the other main mechanism by which lightning causes trauma is by blast injury. And a lot of you have seen a lot of videos lately of cars being struck, and you see the big road being kicked up and everything else like that. Go ahead and press play. This is a guy who narrowly escaped being hit by the blast injury of a lightning strike. So he's going to... Where did he... There he is. Okay, so he knows Jack. He's going to have lunch with Jack. Jack's over by the electrical fence, just waiting to be shocked. I don't know who films their grandpa bringing something in from the car, but then, bam. Okay, now, what you saw there, and here it is one more time, is the blast effect. And the blast effect is also known as thunder, right? And that's from the supersonic sound that occurs after a lightning strike. That blast effect can cause significant trauma to the eardrums, but also in addition to that, can cause the shock wave to send you or other objects into the blunt portions of the body, such as the chest, the abdomen, etc. So when we talk about lightning strikes and the physiology that goes on there, I don't know why I can give this talk and still photograph lightning, but the truth is there's lots of different ways that people can get injured. And the reality is there are long-term effects. About 1 out of 5 people who are struck by lightning will die. Of the remaining 4/5, about 75% of them will have chronic neurologic problems, which we'll look at in just a minute. So we talked about the cardiac effects, which is pretty much that you can have your heart stop because of the strong current. But here's where things are really cool. Check this out. All right, the skin is one of the greatest things. Now, I've treated lightning strike victims, and I've never gotten to see what I'm going to show you now. There are 4 kinds of burns that occur from lightning strikes. The first one is what's called a linear burn. And this linear burn occurs when superheated, wet portions of the skin are suddenly vaporized from their water. And this is the back of a child who survived. And what you can see is sort of the rain as it fell down his shirt sort of pooled in his back. And when he was struck, he developed that linear burn. Now, linear burns are relatively benign and go away within a few days and generally aren't very serious, but that's one form of burn. The next one is called the punctate burns. Sorry, I know what I'm going to be saying next. It's cool. So punctate burns are what happens when electricity travels through your body and then gets to your rubber-soled shoes, and then the electricity has to make a leap towards the ground, and it does so by leaving these little puncture wounds at the very tips of the toes and things like this. Now, I hope I'm talking to an audience that realizes that the way to avoid getting hit by lightning is not by wearing rubber-soled shoes. I'm hoping that we are all in the same agreement, but one of my favorite answers from an elementary school lecture was that I asked where the safest place to be in a storm, and the kid looked up at me and said, "Yeah, in a rubber shoe factory." Isn't that sweet? Yeah, isn't that great? So anyway, you'd see a lot of this in a rubber shoe factory is what would usually happen. But just a moment of brevity, because you guys are possibly falling asleep, I did want to call attention to this suspicious situation that happened at the 2000 block of Evans Avenue last night. A man reported someone had tried to break into his house, and he drew officers a sketch of what the footprints looked like. So there you go. No, not going to work. Really? It worked so great. I was laughing when I put that in there. All right. They're not all going to be funny, but you paid to be here. All right, so the coolest ones are what are called the coronograms, which are these. And actually, that one, we just had one of those blips, if you can pull it back up. Apparently some of my graphics are showing up as so we have to do this whole thing, but we'll get back in just a minute. These are called coronograms, and they're actually very fleeting, and they're little capillaries that capture the electrical current as it travels through the skin. They don't last forever, but they look pretty darn cool, don't they? All right. So those are the 4 kinds of skin burns. There we are. Look at that. I mean, if I got that, I would have somebody tattoo that into me right there, right? Totally. Yeah, man. The chicks dig that, right, chicks? Yes? No? Not really? Okay. All right, now, I'm going to turn your attention. We were talking a little bit about the different types of injury, but this is kind of interesting. A new phenomenon is sort of coming out, and this was brought up at the New England Journal of Medicine about whether or not iPods are a good idea or a bad idea during thunderstorms. There's 2 schools of thought, as it turns out. One is that it's not a good idea because it's in the current that hits the iPod will cause such incredible loud sound that it will blow out your ears. Most people don't realize there's actually 3 little bones inside your ears, and there's a cool MRI with those bones being blown nearly to the back of somebody's throat. Pretty amazing from an iPod. However, the countervailing feeling is it actually is really good to have those iPod cords because they take the current away from the ears and instead just scar you for life down your neck like we see in the other thing. So current recommendations are that what I tell you should do in a lightning storm is do or do not listen to your iPod. Either you'll blow out your ears or you scar your neck. Just remember that. That's good. All right. What happens to muscle when it's struck? It swells and it becomes ischemic. In other words, it dies. And I'll show you a picture of what happens there in a moment with that. But the neurological injury is probably the most concerning when you're struck. First, there's the immediate and transient. This is a cool phenomenon called coronal paralysis. Patients who are struck by lightning often can't move their legs for several minutes to several hours after the event. But the good news for anybody who is struck is this is temporary and it often goes away really rapidly. Then there's, unfortunately, the prolonged and permanent, which includes what we call paresthesias, or chronic, that feeling of nerve burning pain. That can be a pretty serious issue, and that happens fairly common. There's even some concern that patients who have been struck by lightning will develop amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, along with other movement disorders. So, like I said, being struck by lightning leaves a permanent effect. You can suffer traumatic brain injury, such as hemorrhage, and then there's a high portion of people who are struck by lightning who have PTSD. All right. The example I'm going to show you here was actually a successful story. This is a woman who lived through her lightning strike, but this shows you what a direct current can actually do, showing a couple things. And here's the gray box of doom. So we'll restart the slides in a minute. In the meantime, I'll just try and do hand puppets. Okay, we're almost there. There we are. Almost got it. There it is. There we are. All right. That is a direct current injury directly to the head. Again, the woman survived okay, and in the right side, you'll see that her leg is cut open. That was not from the lightning strike itself, but from a thing called compartment syndrome. As the lightning bolt exited the leg, it ended up causing muscle injury, which caused the muscle to swell. There's only so much room for that to swell, and so the way we keep the leg alive is to actually make an incision across the leg to allow it to swell to its maximum amount without cutting off circulation. But she survived, and the baby survived, I'm pleased to tell you. Yeah. Talk about a great birth story. Oh, man. All right. So just to kind of back this up, I just want to show you an example of a case series of patients who were struck by lightning. And what you'll see over on the far left, which I should have highlighted and I wish I had now, but is that the gender of 100% of the people in this series was men, as usual. And this lists the various different neurologic things that occurred because of the lightning strike. Everything from not being able to move the left side of their body, to cardiac arrest, to being unconscious with quadriplegia for a while. And you'll notice that the good news is most of these people improved. Only 2 died and 1 stayed stable after the lightning strike. All right. I'll show you this picture in a minute to back this up. But one of the other things that's fascinating is because I told you that one of the areas where lightning likes to go into the body is through the eyeballs. It's got to go through the eyeball to get there, which is so gross. And but I've got some cool pictures of what can happen when that happens. Don't worry, you may get lucky. The slide might misfire like the other ones. But trust me, it's really cool, okay? You guys liked the lightning burns. It is. So ruptured eardrums are fairly common, and we talked about that being with or without the iPod because of the barotrauma that occurs, the rapid change in pressurization. But you can also have lungs collapse and bruise. And then check that out. Come on, tell me. Isn't that cool? I mean, you can't see it when you get it, but if you're looking at somebody else, it's pretty sweet, right? Oh, by the way, those are not the same person's eyes, because otherwise that would be freaky, because they kind of look like they're not quite right, don't they? All right, I'm going to shift gears here. So we've talked about lightning injury, which is the most studied, but I also want to take some time talking about hail injury, which is often an underappreciated aspect of when we're out there chasing. Now, how many of you, by a show of hands, really love to get hail cored? Okay, let me show you your fate. All right, so fortunately I only have a few of you guys. I am terrified by hail. Hail scares the hail out of me. All right, so this was from Nebraska. These were some hailstones I came across, and I love how all of them look like they belong at the end of a chain and a stick, like a morning star from the Middle Ages. These things look like they mean business, and they're up to about 3 inches in diameter, as you can see on one of them on the left. Now, hail has a lot of different effects. We all know that it forms at different areas of the thunderstorm. We know it has to do with going up into the updraft, and sometimes, particularly with stones like this, going up into the updraft multiple times and gaining layers as it does so. And it can be of various densities, but when it comes down hard. Now, one of the biggest variables in hail injury is whether the stone has been just tossed casually out of the mesocyclone. I can tell you how wonderful that is. I was chasing with Jim Leonard one year, and Jim was a hail magnet. So we're driving, and we're in sunshine, and all of a sudden a hailstone just comes down and smashes right into his windshield. It was fun listening to what he said next, but basically, that was one of those rogue stones that gets tossed out of the mesocyclone. And that actually probably is not going to hit with as much velocity as if you're in the front flank region where you have downdraft winds, where you can get acceleration of hailstones to quite a considerable degree. The reason that hailstones don't end up causing more damage has to do with the fact that there's a lot of air friction, and hailstones are not smooth balls of ice. They're very rough and tumble kind of balls of ice. But the way I like to think of it is if it can shatter glass, it can shatter you. And I have proof of that. By the way, one of the biggest harms with hail is not just the hailstone itself, but the shattering of glass. And that's a big problem. So if you're in a car like this, that's not good. Now, for those of you who saw this last year, this is courtesy of Jeff Johnson. This was the ride from hell into Denver International Airport as they hit some really great thunderstorms. And what I want you to appreciate is not only that the nose is bashed into the aircraft, but there's absolutely virtually knocked in hailstones into the glass there. Now, to be fair, this is not a good comparison between aircraft and cars. But the reality is that hail can go right through those windows, and you can be severely injured from that. In fact, one of the most common hail injuries is cuts that come from the lacerations after the hail's gone through the glass and hit other people. But there are fatalities, and they're very, very rare, fortunately. In the past 100 years, only 150 Americans, that's right, take some pride there, guys. America! Only 150 of us have died from hail injury, which is pretty sweet. But there are some really cool occurrences over the history of the planet that are worth mentioning. And about 10 years ago in Zhengzhou, China, 7 were killed, and the official press agency said that there was egg-shaped hail that hit them. And I'm like, wow, egg-shaped. That sounds rough, weird, I don't know. In Bangladesh, 2-pound hailstones killed 100 in 1983. 2 pounds. Don't want to go to Bangladesh. Coolest is an archaeological dig that was sent to try and explore what caused 200 people to be killed in 850 current era in Rupkund, India. And they found that most of those people had sustained head trauma, very consistent with that which we see with hailstones. And in fact, they determined that this was a mass wipeout of a human party seeking shelter on a elevation that were killed by massive amounts of hail. And then as we learned this morning with the wonderful video from Heidi Farrar, we're talking about 8-centimeter stones traveling based on the photometry at around 150 miles per hour. These things are serious, and yet we like to play around with them a little bit. Now, the last known death from hail occurred in Fort Worth, actually, Texas, during the outbreak of both the tornadoes and severe hailstorm that hit that area back in, was it 99? I'm trying to remember the... When was it? 2000. I was close. Yeah, in 2000, when the downtown was basically destroyed by hail and high winds, and there were many people who were injured by the falling glass that occurred from the upper stories of some of those buildings. So pretty significant. Here's, by the way, the skeleton lake that we were talking about right down there. That was actually one of the pictures of that area. This is what happens when you run and you're not listening to your iPod, and you get hit by hail. You can see that there's considerable bruising that can occur. And then this is a picture of Charles Edwards celebrating a tornado and getting hit in the face by hail. I'd say that it caused some form of permanent neurologic injury, but there's only so much damage that can be done. Hey, I love Charles. That guy likes to play pranks on me all the time, so this is worth it. This is my moment in the sun. All right. We're going to move on to tornado injury. And actually, there's been a lot of studies on tornado injury, and some of you have heard me talk about my experiences going through Joplin, but I'm not going to rehash that. I'm just going to go through some very interesting things that I learned while we were getting this talk together, as well as looking at our emergency management stuff. And actually, as we all know, in 1999, multiple tornadoes hit Oklahoma and traveled through Oklahoma City proper during rush hour. That's a bad time to have that. And there were some really good studies that came out of that to tell us a little bit more about the types of mechanisms of injury that occur in tornadoes. Most of us are familiar with the fact that blunt trauma from flying objects is extremely common, as is penetrating trauma, crush injury, and cuts. We're going to come back to cuts in a minute because that's actually really key here. And then there's also the indirect injury. So we've talked about the eardrums being blown out again and again and again. That's called barotrauma. But the other form of barotrauma is people's lungs can collapse from the very rapid shifts in pressure that occur around a tornado. There's also other indirect injuries from gas leaks and fires and things like this that can occur. Now, what is interesting is if you want to look at the fatality statistics of tornadoes, what we find is that there's actually 2 different peaks here. What we're looking at is the rate of people who were killed in the May 3rd, 99 tornadoes. And those under 5 had the highest rate of death. And then after you get over the age of 25, your risk increases with the elderly being, I shouldn't say elderly because I think it's 64 and above. And I'm, anyway. So, the elderly is not like Charles. No, just kidding. Sorry, twice. But anyway, as you see, you're 6 times more likely to die if you're because of older age. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we probably don't prepare our parents or our senior citizens very well for tornadic storms. We need to make an effort to reach those people to make sure that they have adequate tornado shelters. One of the worst things that happened in Joplin was a couple skilled nursing facilities were actually in the direct line of Joplin, and they had several demented patients, and it was very difficult for them to get those demented patients to safety, and unfortunately many perished. And so we have to think about that in our preparedness plans. How are we going to deal with mom and dad or somebody who doesn't have the capability to move themselves very rapidly? Here we go. Men, it's our turn. Women are far more likely to be killed by tornadoes than men. That's because they take shelter. Men stand outside and get struck by lightning. So there. Yep, that's how that rolls, folks. Okay, this should not come as a surprise. This next one is an example of where people ended up dying, whether they were in a home, an apartment, or a mobile home. And I think what you can clearly see is the clear bar one, which here is easier to see. Hopefully those at home can actually see this. But the clear bars are all for mobile homes. And not only are you far more likely to die by spades, but you're more likely to have severe injury and even more likely to have minor injuries. Basically, all injuries across the board are worse in mobile homes. Now, apartments are actually the safest, which is sort of paradoxical, and then there's regular homes. But we're going to dig deep into that data in just a minute. I want to take a moment to talk about what was a leading cause of death in May 3rd, 1999, and could have happened in El Reno in 13. And that has to do with traffic. Many of you have experienced chaser traffic around a tornadic storm, and it's pretty brutal, especially around the populated areas. So the question is, where is a safe place to go if a tornado is coming? Now, the official line from the National Weather Service is, get out of your car and take shelter in a ditch. And there are data that go for and against this. So we'll go through that right now. What we know is that on that particular day, many sought shelter under the overpasses on I-35, but the ones who stayed in their vehicles weren't injured. The ones who got out of their vehicles were the ones who ended up dying. So here, this is a list of the number of people who were killed. And the people who were killed, the highest number were people who were in their house. If you scroll down, you'll see the ones that are marked outdoors. Those people were the ones who actually got out of their cars and hid under the overpasses, or were getting out of their cars. Incidentally, many of those people were trying to get in their cars to flee the tornado. And there's some weird, it'd be interesting to see if Gary England has any comments about that tonight. What should our message be when it comes to a big tornado coming your way? Should you be in your car and then get stuck in traffic, or not? And here's just a gray box for no reason. We'll come back to that in a minute. In the meantime, I'll just dance. Where's my iPod? It's burning up in my ears. Thank you for asking. There we go. So I didn't know that motor vehicles had a behavior all to themselves, but here's an actual study that looked at the behavior of motor vehicles. And you'd think most SUVs would be there. And this is a big block of text that I'll just tell you basically shows that cars are not affected by the tornadic winds nearly as much as the structures around them. Maybe Tim Marshall can comment on that later today. But in fact, the cars are not as affected by that. With F1 and F2 tornadoes, and even up to F3 tornadoes didn't flip or tip, especially for whatever reason if they were parked next to a house. So if you're in your house, you could get killed, but if you get in your car is unlikely to be affected by it. This study is based on case reports, again, from another tornado. I forget which one it was. But basically, it looked at several other tornadoes and found that cars are actually relatively safe, and they're safer than being in a trailer park. Weird. All right. Now, contrary to that, we have that half the deaths in a Wichita Falls tornado occurred in people who were in their motor vehicles. We don't know what the right recommendation should be, and this is a very interesting and paradoxical finding. Is it safer to be in your car, or is it safer to be in a house? To carry on to that really briefly, I'm going to go over the odds ratios. Now, odds ratios are basically a discussion of how likely are you to die from different things or be seriously injured. This is again back on the May 3rd, 1999. Here we find that the odds ratio of dying in a major tornado were higher in apartments and mobile homes, strangely, than any other place. Motor vehicles, there were no deaths based on the odds ratio. There was one death, I believe, total, but out of the statistics, this is what we get. Most importantly, and the one that I want to comment on the most, no one died in a storm shelter. No one. And that's been consistently what we've looked at. Tim Marshall saw a lot of stuff in the December tornadoes where again and again and again we have these storm shelters that are saving lives. If you live out here or you're in Tornado Alley, you need to think about that. The other thing that was really interesting is again, that if you are outdoors, you are 141 times more likely to die. So again, I don't know whether to tell you to be in your vehicle or out of your vehicle, but that's what it shows. Now, even more interesting from the May 3rd, 99 were these weird statistics. The areas where people were most likely to be killed are areas which I've often considered safe shelter. In a closet or stairwell, bathtub, or a bathroom. Now, these aren't high statistics, but it's very interesting that the people in hallways, and again, here we have basements, good surrogates for tornado shelters, no one's dying. I can't explain these data. I think they're just interesting, so I thought I'd pass them along. So here are your key takeaways. Number one, don't drive into a tornado. Good advice for everybody. Don't go under overpasses or over underpasses. Don't rent an apartment, but do buy a storm cellar. Don't get too young or age after you turn 20. Don't be in a hallway or, if possible, a bathroom. And your car will be left where you parked it if an EF 0 to 3, or it won't be in an EF 4 to 5. This is great news for my wife, who still doesn't know where her car is parked. So at least, I love you, honey. God, please don't be watching this live stream. I want to come home, baby. All right. I want to just briefly go over the other types of injury we see from tornadoes, and the biggest one that I want you to pay attention to is the soft tissue injury. These are people who are affected by tornadoes and not killed. 53% of patients will have soft tissue injury. I will tell you that anybody who's ever been through a tornado is going to get lacerated by the wind blast effect. So one of the problems is we think of tornadoes as columns of wind, and that's true in the atmosphere. But at the surface, it is wind with a bunch of stuff in it that is moving at a very high velocity, including sand, glass, chickens, feathers, all kinds of stuff. And that stuff causes soft tissue injury. And that's actually one of the most dangerous things that can happen to you in a tornado other than just dying outright. Also, you'll notice that about a third of patients who go through a major tornado have fractures, 7% have head injuries, and then, interestingly, a small number of people will actually die outright just from their own medical problems. So that's just one of those things that happens. And this is another, black box for no particular reason. Actually, what I'm going to show you is the blunt trauma effects. We need to reset that one too. Sorry, boss. I'm going to show you what happened in the Alabama tornadoes from 2011. And this is actually what blunt trauma looks like in an F5 tornado. It looks like this white screen with lots of little dots of water. Here we go. There you go. Now, you may not know what a normal spine looks like, but I think you'll agree, unless you're Quasimodo, that is not a normal spine. That is a spine, and part of the patient got moved, and the other part did not. This patient ended up paralyzed. But this is the kind of stuff that we talk about when we talk about blunt force trauma in tornadoes. That is what we were talking about, is the ability to move your back in half. Now, in some cases, tornadoes are very powerful. For example, these that hit in Burnett County included one home that was thrown 150 years from its foundation. Now, folks, I'm just going to be honest with you. If that is going to happen, you need to be in your DeLorean. You need to hit 77 miles per hour, right? Or you could go 88. With the new economic standards and things like this. I hate when I get a meme wrong. All right. Hell's wrong with me. I'm a child of the 80s, sort of. All right. Now, we talked about soft tissue injury. This is ubiquitous after a tornado, and what I want to tell you is that people who help people after tornadoes are also at high risk of developing soft tissue injury, unless you're properly outfitted. Many people don't wear, I see a lot of people chasing in tennis shoes and shorts, which I don't have any problem with that. But you have to realize that if you get into a tornado situation or you're trying to help somebody who is just injured by a tornado, you are likely to get cuts, scrapes. I've talked about this at a previous ChaserCon, so I'm not going to belabor it. You have to think about these things because what I'm going to tell you next is really terrifying. And this has to do with the soil underneath the tornado. So this is a case series that was published in the New England Journal after the Joplin tornado in 2011 about a cutaneous mucormycosis. Now, mucormycosis is a fungal, this is cool, necrotizing means flesh-eating, and cutaneous means skin, and Joplin means Missouri. So I just want to make sure that you guys are able to stay with me through most of what I'm talking about. What you see up there that isn't nearly as impressive as it is on my computer screen at home is, in fact, a black, rapidly progressive, flesh-eating fungus. Not very good. Anybody who's taken high school biology, what does that look like to you, that bottom right? What does that look like under a microscope? Anybody? Spores. Bread mold. It looks like bread mold, except in this case, you're the bread and it's the mold. And this fungal infection is also a black box. Because when your slides go well, they go really well. So as opposed to MRSA. So MRSA is a bacteria, and it can be a flesh-eating bacteria, although strep is the bigger player in that. And MRSA is a community-acquired infection. It didn't used to be. You could only get it in hospitals, but now we've spread the wealth everywhere with superbugs. And MRSA is a risk, but no more so than any other time you get a cut. This bad boy is pretty serious. Now here's the swath of destruction that occurred in the wake of the Joplin tornado. And all those letters that you see there are the patients that we're going to be talking about, 13 in all, and where they were relative to the destruction of the Joplin tornado. They were not actually in the tornado proper, but sustained injuries. And what we found was, of the 13 patients affected, all of them were immunocompetent. In other words, no HIV, no steroids, no reason not to be able to fight infection. Perfectly healthy individuals. This fungus that we're talking about is seen after tsunamis and volcanic eruptions. So, good possibility that if you're in LA, you'll be getting to know this at some point in the future. No one gets it, by the way, from blizzards. So those of you on the East Coast, you made it. All right. Now, most people who developed this fungus had penetrating injuries or multiple injuries. Some of those penetrating injuries were as simple as puncture wounds. That simple. 5 of those 13 died. It's pretty awful statistics. Now, it turns out the reason I tell you this is, and we learned a lot from Joplin, many people in the course of the tornado ended up afterwards not having their wounds washed thoroughly. And believe it or not, soap and water may reduce the risk of this happening. So you have to think about, geez, if I'm ever around tornado debris at all, it's time to take a really good shower and make sure I look at all of my different areas where I've gotten any wounds. And since that's the conclusion of my talk, I thought we'd talk about cows. Can you go ahead and play the video, please? So the cows do play a role here. Every now and again in storms, I've noticed that cattle get free. And when cattle get free, weird things can happen. So you have to be extremely very cautious whenever you're around that. Now, this is leading up to a storm apparently about 9 years from now on my birthday, according to the date stamp. And the biggest thing you need to remember is storms can be very romantic. They can be great places. But when you have cows, man, you have cows. Good news, just like the one earlier, I'll let you know that that one went on to deliver successfully as well. So anyway, despite the cows. So that is what I wanted to tell you, all the good and bad news about that. That's the electrical, everything from electrical injury to traumatic cow injury. Fun to watch though, right? I mean, you admit it. So if you have any questions, I'll take them now. Otherwise, I really appreciate all your time. I hope you guys got to learn something about severe weather injury. Any questions? Yes. That's a great question. Is your window, if your windows are down and you're shooting lightning from inside your car but with the window down, no, it doesn't necessarily provide a Faraday cage effect. Yeah, people have been struck inside their vehicles. There have also been case reports of lightning traveling up the the steering wheel column and striking people inside the car. So it's only a Faraday cage if you're in a Google driverless vehicle. Then you should be fine, and don't roll down your windows. You can definitely still be struck by side flash, even in the vehicle. Other questions? Yeah.
Your May 3rd statistics about the larger percentage in bathrooms, hallways, might be because there's more people in those locations, fewer in the living room next to the picture window. So you might need to normalize it by how many people are where when they actually get struck.
So excellent. So the question and the statement was, is it the fact that during the May 3rd tornado outbreak, those who were injured inside bathrooms and closets were injured at a higher rate than other places in the house because that's where most people were? And the odds ratio did use case control mechanisms to correct for that. So it actually, this is real statistics, which is pretty cool, whatever that means. Who knew? You know, 70% of statistics are 50% likely to be made up, as we all know. God, you guys really suck. I'm just saying, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Tell us about the people that had injuries because they were in bathrooms. How's that compare with people who were in bathrooms and survived?
Right. So all of those people who were injured in the bathrooms also had a higher proportion of major injury compared to those who did not, who took shelter in a basement, for example, or for whatever reason, an interior hallway.
What I meant was,
Yeah.
what about those people that you don't hear about that did go to a bathroom and survived where they may not have in another part of the house?
Right. You can't what you need to do is take a family of 5 and put one person in each room to determine if that was the safest place. You're right, and I appreciate you volunteering on behalf of science. Yes. The difference between positive and negative strikes in terms of injury? In terms of, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know that that's ever been studied. I know that you want to not get hit by positive strikes. I think I know that very clearly because that's where you have some really high-powered bolts and clear channel. But other than that, I don't know, and I'd welcome anybody who does know that question or answer. Any other questions? Yes? So a reporter who doesn't have a question, but she has a comment. I love it. That's awesome. So you work for Fox. Right.
He said the other family members in the bathtub were injured, was my understanding.
So what you're bringing up are the various cases that countermand what I said. The one thing that... No, you're right. We can't tell for sure. All I can tell you is that, and again, just going back, it's a valid question. For example, I've been holding this since the beginning of the presentation, and I haven't been bitten by a tiger. So is that causally related or related? And the question is answered a little bit by the fact that they actually used a case control mix, meaning that they looked at people who were injured in other areas of the house. Now, again, we don't have a lot of tornadoes. No one's ever done this with Joplin, for example. I don't know if anyone's actually doing this with the tornadoes we had over December, and no one did it with Tuscaloosa, so I can't really comment on that. What I'm saying is the statistics are very interesting, and they beg the question, do we really know where the safest place to be is? And that's great, and I'm sorry I teased you mercilessly. A little bit. Yes, sir.
When you talk about the people that were in their cars under an overpass versus getting out, has anybody talked to them to find out why? I mean, why do people get out of their car versus staying in their car under an overpass?
So if those of you who can remember back in 1999, there was actually the Andover tornado in Kansas in 1990 or 89, 1991, where there was video that was taken by a news crew that ended up taking refuge underneath an overpass, and everyone was it was really great gripping video. In fact, they never were actually hit by the tornado proper, but probably by an inflow jet more than anything else. And they survived. And since that time, many people have seen that video as evidence that what you do in a tornado is to get up underneath the girders. That was the reason that many people did come out. The people who were killed in a very unpleasant way from underneath that overpass. Now, being underneath the overpass in hail makes a great deal of sense. However, unfortunately, if you're in the bear's cage, you're going from one thing to the next. So just a brief comment on people who are really doing a lot of extreme chasing. Everyone's allowed to make their own decisions, but guys, we did lose Tim Samras and Carl Young and Tim's son. It's not going to be a matter of time before we start losing more chasers. Please, please, please be cautious and recognize that when you're on a road and you act irresponsibly, it doesn't just affect your lives, it affects other people's lives. And what happened in the May 3rd, 1999 tornadoes was I-35 became a complete standstill. And it was because people had a misguided belief to hide under the girders. So your behavior.
Weather affects everyone, every home.
Needs to chase their own way, but remember that our actions are bigger than just affecting us. So I think that's it for me for the moment. If anyone has other questions, I'll be happy to take them. Enjoy the rest of ChaserCon. I'm sure it'll be much more uplifting once Tim comes on later on today. Thanks, guys.
Weather affects everyone, every home, every climate, every day. It's critical in every country, every industry. How you prepare and respond can be the difference in lives saved or lost, property protected or destroyed, and being ready for whatever comes next. You need a partner who can equip you with intelligent solutions to prepare for and protect against significant weather threats. Barron is the standard for critical weather intelligence. Through decades of work across the globe, Barron has led the way in every market, inventing and innovating weather solutions. Since inventing street-level storm tracking, we haven't stopped breaking new ground in weather data, radar hardware, real-time display capabilities, and hyper-local dissemination tools. Partners benefit from our effective, reliable solutions, tailored to their precise needs. This cohesive network of tools offers the flexibility to incorporate legacy assets. To identify hydrological threats, Dual Pole Data provides the most powerful and accurate hydrometeor information available. Barron leads the way in Dual Pole Data products with solutions that can pinpoint events like hail, flooding, and more. Our world-class radar systems have been proven in countries across the globe, including the successful upgrade of the United States National Weather Service radar system to dual pole. A complete suite of display solutions and class-leading data products work together to effectively display and interpret live radar. Additionally, Barron forecast models provide the most precise model guidance and weather prediction. Digital solutions provide hyper-local dissemination of information. Send alerts to an exact area to notify people who are in the path of a threat. Barron defines the standard in significant weather solutions, turning meteorological data into actionable intelligence to save lives, to protect property, and to prepare for what's next. Barron is your partner for critical weather intelligence.
I was working with the Weather Service in Wilmington. It was a great spot, nice sandy beaches, but there was a possibility of a promotion out here in Norman. And I'd been to Norman the year before for the radar development course, so I knew the town, I knew the area. And I actually was here in July, so I knew the summer, at least 4 weeks of it. And when the opportunity came up, I went to my wife. I said, hey, there's this job opening at the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. I'd really like to take an opportunity to do that. At the time, the center, if you remember, was transitioning from Kansas City, Missouri down here to Norman. And so this would have been one of the first entry-level positions at the office here in Norman. And I told her, look, it's really not bad. Norman's a great spot, and the weather's nice most of the time, and we'll come out here and maybe a year or two. 20 years. 20 years later, and I don't regret a day of it. So we drove halfway across the country, 2 cars, 2 kids, 2 cats. I didn't have air conditioning in my truck. I drove around with a white towel on my head. I think nowadays I'd probably be shot, but... And we get here on June 6th, 1996, and drive into town, and it's 106 degrees. And there's a very famous quote that everyone at SPC knows. If you ask them, what did Greg Carbon's wife say the day they moved to town? Greg, you've brought us to hell. Swear not. She didn't like that, but she said it. And the cottonwoods were in bloom, so there was sort of like these little pieces of cotton flying through the air, almost looked like it was snowing, but it's 106 degrees. So that's the famous Lisa Carbon quote from 1996. Looks like I'm doing this. I hope you're not upset. So if you want any inside scoop on what goes on at SPC, I'm going to give it to you next half hour. So I started at the Storm Prediction Center as an entry-level meteorologist in what was called the Hazardous Weather Update Unit, HWU. This was a new product that was developed by the National Weather Service. In hindsight, I think it was exactly for spinning up the office. It wasn't going to go anywhere beyond the first year. All it was really as an experimental mechanism to make sure all the bells and whistles for communication and dissemination of information worked here in Norman. And if you haven't had a chance yet, you can actually go and see where the storm prediction moved into the same building that the National Severe Storms Lab had been occupying for many years, some 70s, Don, probably early 70s. And it's right over here on, over there. Yeah, right over there on North Base, the North Research Park on the other side of the airport here. And it's a modern building, a kind of neat concrete structure with a lot of neat windows and angles. And it was never designed as an operational center for the Storm Prediction Center. It was a research building, offices in there. But the idea was that we combine aspects of operational forecasting with the research that had been going on here for many years, the excellent research in both radar meteorology and severe storm meteorology. So it was an absolutely wonderful opportunity to get to know not just scientists involved in the endeavor in improving meteorology, but move all of SPC down here over the next year. Oh, and I gave a hashtag in my tweet just a little while ago about why today is a great day for meteorology. Does anybody know why I said that? Today is a great day for meteorology because who knows how many Greg Forbes or how many Jim Cantoris or how many Chuck Doswells are actually being formed right now in 2-foot snowdrifts in the eastern U.S. They're coming, believe me. You meet people throughout your career whose formative years are when they decided they wanted to be a meteorologist. And I'm no different. And it's the snow. I grew up in New England, and it was the storms like this one off the East Coast today that got me interested in meteorology. How does that happen? Fascinated by the forecast process. The fact that we were able to say 20 inches or more of snow in D.C. 3 days in advance is phenomenal to me. I mean, when I was a kid, you're lucky if you heard flurries in the forecast and you wake up with a foot. That doesn't happen anymore. Well, maybe once in a while. And one of the aspects I loved about winter storms was if you could predict them well enough, you could predict school was going to be called tomorrow. That's an awesome thing. I don't need to do my homework tonight. There's no school tomorrow. How do you know? I'm forecasting it. Except you bust. Then you're in trouble. So that's why I think today, that's one reason I was thinking today is just a phenomenal day when you think about all the foundational meteorologists that are starting out, looking out the window first thing this morning at the snow. And yes, I know they're not supercells, but it doesn't matter. There are many, many people I've met who have seen supercells, who've been affected by tornadoes, whose houses have been struck by lightning. Boom, all of a sudden they're like, I want to know more about this. I want to go into meteorology. So today is a great day for meteorology because of what's going on the East Coast. And it won't be long, it'll be something here in the plains or on the West Coast. So I think that's really pretty neat. Are we getting anywhere? Okay, I'll go on. Worked here a few years. SPC, after the hazardous weather update ended, almost exactly a year after it started in 1997, And I got a nice letter from Louis Uccellini saying, great job, we're not going to fire you, but you need to find something else to do in Norman at SPC. Great, that wonderful opportunity. At the time, they began the winter weather forecast program. And because I was interested in winter weather, this was great. And we spent actually 6 months in training with a variety of research meteorologists from the lab. I think I was teamed up with Dr. Cortinas, who'd done a lot of work in freezing rain climatology, and others were teamed up one-on-one. So you had an operational NWS meteorologist and a research meteorologist work together for 6 months in various scientific aspects of forecasting winter weather. And after that 6-month period of time, the SPC began its winter weather mesoscale discussion program, and it was really neat. And it was almost thinking along the lines that, hey, if this goes really well, the Storm Prediction Center will not only be well known for tornado and severe thunderstorm forecasting, but other forms of hazardous weather, including winter weather. And it did go very well, but at the same time, you've got other centers and other offices across the country doing winter weather. And winter weather doesn't really match all that well with severe, but it's mesoscale. And we learned an awful lot about the mesoscale processes involved in heavy rain or heavy snow and icing events. And in fact, the winter that started was one of the more historic ice storms in the Northeast, 2 to 4 inches of ice in January 1998. So that program went along pretty well, but the problem is in the summer, what do you do with these people? And the government does not like the idea that you do not have something structured and scheduled to go out the door, especially in the Weather Service. So we couldn't afford to have 5 people working their tails off in the winter talking about mesoscale meteorologists and doing nothing. I was saying, well, wait a minute, we'll do a lot more in the off season. We'll do research. We'll look back at forecast verification. Not enough. Too ambiguous. So, let's do fire weather. That'll keep them busy in the summer, winter weather in the winter, and we can hold on to 5 or 10 meteorologists and say we have something that is of use. So we started a fire weather program. That was probably early 2000s. And a lot of people thought at the time, what in the world is SPC doing fire weather for? Well, it's really fascinating. How many of you have ever done fire weather forecasting? It is a fascinating branch of meteorology that I didn't really know very much about. And it's sort of the opposite, but not quite opposite, of severe storm forecasting, in that what you're looking for is very low moisture, very low RH, and high winds, usually in the summertime and higher terrain, but also we see plenty of activity in the plains, post-dryline wildfires, things like that. And especially in the West, you do need thunder for wildfire events because it's high-based, low precipitation thunderstorms that result in fire starts from lightning. And so what's really neat about that is you're combining your thunderstorm forecasting skills with your other meteorology skills to look for almost just the opposite, low humidity and some wind. So that program got started, and actually it's a national scale outlook that continues to this day that provides decision makers and others with a broad view of where the atmosphere is going to put together conditions for extreme fire behavior. And of course, there's a lot more to that challenge. I mean, you have to know about fuels and about long-term drought and or short-term weather that's caused the fuels to moisten, and maybe it's not as much of a risk. There are many aspects of fire weather that I find absolutely fascinating. And in some respects, we see fire weather events that are as destructive as tornadoes. In recent years in Colorado, some of the real estate loss to wildfire in the billions of dollars. So it's a pretty substantial and important forecast function for the SPC. We're still not going to go here, are we? All right. I'll keep going. So around 2000, I was looking this up this morning, I think it was the early 2000s, we actually had done well enough at winter weather and fire weather that, believe it or not, we had the possibility of increasing the staff and bringing in additional forecasters and meteorologists. So we proceeded to do that. And what was really neat about that is it then provided an opportunity for some of us who had come here back in the mid-90s to perhaps be promoted on station. The Weather Service didn't used to work on the model of local promotion. You usually had to move around to move up the ladder. So this was great. It's like, I'm in Norman, I'm doing weather every day, I love the people I'm working with, and I'm going to be promoted with very little in the way of competition because they basically took the core group of us that had started in the mid-90s and moved us over. And now we're in the ranks of the Edwards and the Corfidis and the Jack Hales and all the great forecasters at SPC. And of course, one of the things that's great is in a unit like this, you learn through osmosis how your colleagues do it. Well, how are they successful or not? I'm not going to do that. I might do that, but so you get thrown into the midst of convective forecasting and tornado forecasting. And I consider myself an equal opportunity meteorologist. I'm interested in all aspects of meteorology, from tropical weather to severe weather and supercells. So this is great. I'm now an Outlook mesoscale forecaster at the SPC. Wild. Never thought that would happen. What a dream. And my first shift is a August evening shift. And there is lightning everywhere. I mean, everywhere over the country. You go in. All right, your job is now to draw the outline where lightning will be between the hours of 8 p.m. this evening and 8 a.m. tomorrow. And it's everywhere. It's like, well, I might as well draw a whole line right around the continental United States. Right there you go. There's your thunderstorm outlook, because there is lightning everywhere in August. And I'm sitting there going, I don't belong here. This is not for me. I swear, you can take the most advanced, intellectually and high-scoring student from any graduate school in this country, and you can sit them down, and they are not going to be able to forecast until they have several years out under their belt. You have to take a beating from Mother Nature before you start to appreciate how difficult forecasting is, and maybe then you might get an edge and be able to score some winners once in a while as far as convective outlooks, and especially severe storm forecasting, which is extremely difficult. You know, guys, I just came up with a possible solution if you want to call up a browser on a PC that works. Can you go to Google? All right, I'll go on. So I worked at SPC Outlook Forecasting 24/7. Oh, we got it. Oh, good. All right, so long story short, I'm still here, but not for much longer, and we'll go through this slideshow. All right, so who's got that? You're going to do that? Okay, so the slideshow, I really could have gone on, but, you know, I hope that was a short, brief history of SPC. How many of you gotten down there recently or in the past? So, wow, that's a lot. I did want to tell you one anecdote about chasing. So I'm like really excited to come out here and chase storms in the mid-90s, and I take my wife out, who is somewhat reluctant. Thank you. And she says, she didn't really want to go, but she wanted. All right, we'll go. Put the two kids in the car, and we're out. And it was a May event. I can't quite remember what day it was, and it wasn't very far from here. And I almost lost my whole family to a rear flank downdraft that day. Luckily, we made it just through in time and down into Purcell, and we hid in a car wash while the large hail fell, so I didn't lose a windshield. But I felt pretty stupid. And then the next one opportunity, my older son was really interested in weather and wanted to go chasing. He thought that was pretty cool. Coolest thing Dad did. So we went on another time. I don't remember the date. Drove 6 freaking hours to Kansas, and it's just blue sky. It's hard. And I learned very early that long hours on the road that I'm not a big fan of. And the storms did go up, but they were another 4 or 5 hours away, and it was already 6:30 at night, and I'm thinking, I don't want to wait here for 4 hours and then drive home in the dark and storm. So good luck to you. I gave up on that a while ago, and I figured you be around Norman long enough, you really just have to look out the window once in a while, and something's going to show up. And I have seen a number of tornadoes and funnel clouds just by chance, and those are interesting. I also wanted to tell you about May 3rd, 1999. That was really the first experience with a Southern Plains tornado event. And I worked that day, but again, it was before I'd gone over to Outlook meso forecasting. And I did notice I was contributing to the forecast process. I did notice that the profiler winds at Tucumcari, New Mexico were certainly stronger than was being indicated in the model guidance. But I'll never forget a forecaster's quote that day. I don't think we're ever going to hear this again from an SPC lead. That is, I'm just waiting for the first lightning strike before I issue the watch. Well, there's already a tornado on the ground without a lightning strike. And so I think that gives you some idea of how far we've actually come. I mean, the watch for the Dallas tornadoes on the unfortunate day after Christmas came out many hours, 4.5 hours, 5 hours ahead, and we've seen that type of progress occur in the last 2 decades. I mean, remarkable progress. If you'd asked me 20 years ago what we would be doing and how we would be doing it now, that would not have been a very verifiable forecast. So what I'm going to do here, since I've sucked up probably about half of my time already, I'll give you a review of 2015 tornado events, and maybe we'll hit up one or two with more detailed meteorology if you're up for it, and just sort of run through the process of assessing the environment for the prospect of F2 and stronger, because that's what matters, to be honest. It's the F2, or what becomes rated F2, because those are tornadoes that are going to ruin somebody's day. And so what I want to focus on is, as we go into that forecast process, how do we determine that we are in that environment that will support strong tornadoes? So there are most of the tornadoes, and I'm not sure if Greg Forbes is still working or watching the progress here. He may differ. It's very preliminary, talking about 1,100 tornadoes in 2015, maybe a few lower than that. 1056, I think this says. And you can see how above normal activity, especially in Texas, and a lot of that is due to more recent events, but they were well above normal before December anyway. Oklahoma was above normal. And then many states around the plains, up into the Northeast and even into Florida, below normal. But it is interesting how nature has a way of making up for these things, and look where we are now. We're probably well above normal for 2016 in Florida so far. What is interesting about the year is that none of these events they don't really stand out in terms of outbreak days. There are not a lot of large number of days with many long-track tornadoes. There are a couple of days with one or two. We saw the 23rd of December, not a single track, but a long, well-mature supercell moving along for 50 to 70 miles. You can see that one there, the F4 in northern Mississippi. But there aren't any days there are days with a lot of tornadoes, but there are not a lot of days with a lot of significant tornadoes. And this sort of continues a trend in recent years of below normal tornado activity when you count the whole year up. Now, I thought before my talk, well, that line, it's a D-trend. I'm going to call that the chaser adjustment factor. Because if you go back in time, we believe there were the same number of tornadoes on average every year across the continental United States, but many of them did not get into the official database. And it's really until recent decades that we see an increase, especially in F0, F1 tornadoes, just because people are out there looking for them. And I had a talk with Tom Krasoulis a few years ago, the author of the huge green book on significant tornadoes, an amazing man. He thinks we might have something like 20,000 tornadoes a year on average in the U.S. I said, please, no, don't. But I just saw some other talks, and I think there may be one here, or did Forbes talk about this, the short track or very, very narrow path tornadoes associated with QLCS events. More of those are showing up than ever before. So this line, the light red, is the actual number of reports, and you see that trend upward. But we know that there are problems with the beginning and the ending of that trend line. There are too few in the end, in the beginning, and probably more than enough in the modern era. So how do we get at what's normal? And we get at it right now by adjusting or looking at just F1 and stronger. And so this is just a simple linear trend removal, guessing that the average number of tornadoes per year in the United States right now is around 1,200. So if you assume that on an average year there are 1,200 tornadoes, and you remove the upward trend, you get the dark red line here. And you see how 2015, 14, 13, and 12 have all been near or below one standard deviation below that 1,200 normal. Quite remarkable to see so few tornadoes occurring, so little activity, but actually not unusual for other periods in the record. If you look back in the 80s, there's a dip there too, where we went through several years with not a lot in the way of tornado activity. But another thing that shows up on this chart that we don't really have a good explanation for is the variability in the recent decade or so, not quite 2 decades. You see the swings from something like a year like 2011 to these last 4 or 5 years of little activity. These dramatic swings that occur from large events back to not so active. And there's some ideas of why that might be occurring, but there really isn't anything firmed up. Why is one year busier than another on the large scale? And it seems like some years we make up for the lack of activity late in the year, November outbreaks, December outbreaks, which we saw this past year. We actually creeped up. I believe we'll probably come back up above. It won't be a standard deviation. It'll be less than that, below normal. But again, what is normal? So I'm going to go through the daily big events here. The bars, vertical bars, are the daily counts with the y-axis on the left showing the daily number. And this is, again, preliminary. I'm trying to get as close as I can to the numbers before they're finalized later this year. And then the ascending red dark line with the y-axis on the right is just the running annual sum for 2015. And it started actually quite nicely. Busy January, at least it looked like it would be, and then we went flat until March, and I'll talk a little bit about both the flat line and the March event. Then we picked up in April, and we really picked up in May, and you can see a number of events here in May. The red date are dates in which there were killer tornado events, and you'll see the adjusted 2015 fatality counts on the bottom as we go through May. Now, after a really, really quiet start to the year, May turned out to be about 150% of normal. Maybe some. How many? So just raise your hand if you were on any of these events. That's a pretty good contingent. Maybe a third of you have experienced some of these. Then another rather quiet period until the mid-November event in the high plains, highly anomalous, very unusual. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then the last two events in December, one of which is a little more, it happened in a region where you might expect December events, and another one that didn't. Okay, so the long stretch. I have a glass, do I have a water bottle somewhere up here? So I'll talk about this flat line stretch here from January through March. This is actually a time of year that you wouldn't expect a lot of tornado activity or severe thunderstorm activity, but there is some. Anybody want to guess what's the average number of watches that SPC would have issued between now and the end of March? Just throw out a number. 60? That's pretty good. Anyone else? 150? Yeah, that's happened before. The average is 80. And through March of 2015, we had issued 13. Is my clicker working here? Stopped. Oh, I think I'm going through this. Let me go through there. Okay, 13 watches. And there they are on the map. And there's the departure from the watch count, if you look at it on a county basis, back to how many years? 12 years. And so if you looked at all the watches that have been issued from, what does it say on there, 2003 through 2014, and then you looked at 2015 and you just did a simple anomaly, you'd see that. And then I love this chart, but it's busy. This is basically the daily watch count all the way back to 1970. 70 is at the lower end of the y-axis. 2015 is all the way at the top, and the black bar at the top. And you can see that long stretch of days, 53, I believe, or 51 days in 2015 with no tornado or severe thunderstorm watch issued. And you can also see on this how remarkably active it begins to get as you go into March. The probability of a watch as you go through March comes up to almost better than even odds that you'll see a watch somewhere on a day in late March. So 51 days without a watch, that's a pretty long span, longest in about 30 years. And then also a very, very long watch-free stretch in March of 23 days. And there's some of the longer stretches. And it's interesting to think that, as you go back in time, we probably were not quite as good as depicting, where we should put a watch, especially in the winter months. So as you go back in time, the span gets a little larger. And those spans may be there are probably bust events in there, where there was severe weather and no watch. And you get into the modern era. And these occur in the winter months, these long spans, and that should come as no surprise either. But in the modern era, to have a 51-day stretch without a watch is a pretty remarkable event. So these are the watch counts. We talked about the total number through March. The average is the mean value is 80. And these are all the watch counts for every year back to 1970, just summed up for each period of time. And so you can see where 2013 falls well below the 1 percentile rank, which is what, down there around, we had 13, so I think the 1 percentile rank is about 15. And then the 99 percentile rank at the very top. So what I wanted to do was try to come up with a way in which you could estimate the number of watches you'd have by the end of March and how rare is March 2015. So you can do that in a lot of different ways, but the simplest way is to just take the daily probability and then randomly choose a count from this daily probability. And it must have been awfully slow because I did this for 25,000 years. So there's a 25,000-year simulation of watch counts, and when you do a simulation like this, you should expect to see the distribution the same as what you have in your observed distribution for ranks and means, which we do, but I couldn't simulate a year with a lower watch count than what we saw in 2015. So the takeaway, and this isn't a robust approach to probabilistic forecasting based on a distribution, but it's close. And what it tells me is that we'll probably not see another year with so few watches for quite some time. Okay, so we did break the spell on March 25th, and this was an interesting day in northeast Oklahoma, and I'm going to just go through the forecast process on this event. So the outlooks leading up to the event were pretty decent. The area was in a day 4, I believe, 15%, and increased to a 5 tour across that area, which is not bad considering there weren't a lot of tornadoes with this event. And on the bottom, I have the day 4, 3, and 2 output from the climate forecast system. I could give a whole other talk on what I'm doing with the CFS in terms of extended forecasting, but it's not quite ready for prime time. But the large-scale signal was there. It wasn't high confidence, but there was a signal in place, especially out around three days or so that, you know, we could see tornadoes on a boundary in northeast Oklahoma. I think it's always important to look at the daily probability with respect to what the forecast says, and so that's what these maps attempt to do. On March 25th in northeast Oklahoma, I can't read my own slides here. A 5% probability is essentially 10 times climatology. So there's definitely a signal that the meteorologists are keying in on, given the model guidance and other information about the pattern, that it is different than climo and that there's an enhanced risk for severe weather because we've got some signal. If we had nothing to go on, we'd basically tell you what that map shows. But if we've got information, we can begin to refine the forecast and give you that. So now I'm going to step into the day of the event and go through sort of a process of evaluating the storm environment during day 1. So again, pattern recognition plays a huge role, as you all know, in severe storm forecasting. So it's remarkable how often these patterns repeat themselves, not necessarily in the same areas, but certainly the atmosphere puts the conditions together in a certain way. And there's a very narrow range of conditions that the atmosphere has to place itself in order for significant tornadoes to occur. And so we're going to look at that with respect to the day 1. So we got a surface low in the plains, got a warm front. The surface low and the warm front show up all the time, most of the time, in big tornado events. Oh, the other thing about meteorology is you never should be too deterministic. So we'll say some of the time. But it's remarkable how often that pattern will repeat itself. Low pressure, warm front, cold front, dry line, they all seem to be around somewhere during these events. Now, some of you have probably gotten into the storm scale ensemble information that's available from SPC and from EMC, and that's a whole nother talk. But what I'm going to show you here are basically the products that I look at. Again, it starts out with observations, and then I'll refer to the model information. And this is a 7-member ensemble system that SPC's put together, consisting of primarily advanced research WRF at about 4-kilometer resolution, some of the NAM information, and some of the NMM data from EMC in Washington at about the same resolution. And we're just looking at the probability of a simulated supercell storm with some form of rotation over the 24-hour period from 12 UTC to 12 UTC. And those are pretty high probabilities. I've looked at this guidance long enough to say that there is a pretty decent chance that you will be in a watch if you see a 60% probability or greater on this plot. When you call that up in the morning and you see a 60% or greater area, let me know if you don't see a watch in that area on those days. And again, it's a probability, right? So what I'm saying is they're better than even odds there will be a watch in the area with 60. It's not calibrated, but that's just my anecdotal evidence. Also, the trends are really important. So if you look at what happens between what's available first thing in the morning and then what becomes available a little later at after 12 UTC, this would be mid to late afternoon that this information is available, you can get some idea of whether you're really locking in on a signal that gives you severe weather, possibly tornadoes, in the area where the updraft helicity probabilities are high. The threshold for these probabilities is relatively low in the model world. 25 meters squared per second squared is somewhat of a low value for storm rotation in the ensemble guidance. You may see other probabilities for, well, we do have one available for 100 meters squared per second squared, which really ramps up the filter on the signal from the guidance. So if you're starting to see probabilities at 100 meters squared per second squared, that's a big signal. That means that the atmosphere is putting together the conditions to support potentially strong tornadoes. And I'll show maybe an example of that coming up, I think. So here's the radar at 21 UTC. Already have storm initiation, northeast Oklahoma. Let's compare. There's a 20-hour forecast from the ARW 4-kilometer wharf. Not bad. So the question is then, if the model is onto this, and you know, it looks like the evolution is fairly well understood, we've got very high probabilities for rotating storms in this environment, but now do the observations support EF2 or stronger tornadoes? And now you can go to the SPC mesoanalysis page and go, and oh yeah, so now it gets a little thicker. Okay, so take a deep breath. This is heavy meteorology, but I think you guys are up for this, right? Yeah? Or should I go back to my anecdotes? Okay, we'll move on. So you go to the SPC website, you go to mesoscale analysis, right? How many have been here? Oh, cool. All right, I feel a little better. If you click on those maps, if you click on any map on the mesoanalysis page, you get this little box and whisker chart that comes up that shows you the fine environments in which SIGTOR, QLCS TOR, this is really great work by John Hart and Brian Smith and Rich Thompson and others at SPC to look at actual cases of supercell storms and then document the environment in which these events occur. And so what I'm showing here is basically a time change of the environment, and the bars are basically the time. We start at 19, 20, 21Z. So we're going for the 3 hours leading up to tornado genesis here in northeast Oklahoma, and we're looking at the change in the environment based on the mesoscale analysis just prior to tornado formation. And so if we look at the bars from the top, we have the SIGTOR parameter, which combines shear, CAPE, LFC. It basically combines all the other parameters we're looking at to come up with a normalized index of significant tornado. And the box up there is basically the inner quartile, the middle range of the 27 cases. So for the 27 cases that have occurred in the past, and these are EF2 or stronger tornadoes, the range of STP is somewhere between 0, that's not very good, and 2.5. Probably want to be above 0. And so you see where your range there in time from 21 or 19 to 20 to 21. We're going up the scale in SIGTOR parameter. And not to leave you folks out, I'll look at this one too, although it's farther away. ML CAPE is the second one from the top, and we're way up in the 75% distribution for ML CAPE for this event. There was a lot of instability laying around up there in northeast Oklahoma for early March, so more than sufficient in that range for a SIGTOR. The next one down is the effective shear, right? Effective deep layer shear. And you can see how we've improved. We're coming up into the interquartile range by the time tornadoes are about to occur. A little low on the effective helicity, but we're within the range. Significant tornadoes have occurred with effective helicity in the range of, what is it there, 10, I can't really read those, 150, no, it's almost 300, yeah. And then finally, the LCL is right on the mark. The lifted condensation level is just below 1 kilometer above the surface. We know that that's a really interesting area. If you can get your LCL below 1 kilometer, then the mesocyclone can be maintained and strong enough that you can acquire rotation very near or at the surface. So this is a simple exercise in evaluating storm scale environments, knowing that you're leading up to the event, watching the pattern, looking at the forecast, comparing to CLIMO, and then ultimately evaluating the environment and the atmosphere, and its changes from 1 hour to the next. How am I doing for time? I don't want to suck up. Okay. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Yes. Oh, that's another talk. John, hi John. I saw John Allen is here, but yes, there is a connection. It's not the only connection, but there is certainly a connection, and it's probably strongest in this time of year, in the winter months. You know, from December, January, February, March, the signal for an uptick or above normal level of activity for severe weather during a warm phase, El Nino year, is essentially from Texas, South Texas, across Florida. And we're already seeing that signal manifest this year. But it's not the only thing. And in fact, we had an El Nino year, what was it, in 2009? Was it 2009? We had, the last El Nino, which wasn't as strong as this one, 2009. We had numerous attempts we had vigorous convection move across the state of Florida on a number of occasions in the cool season that year, but something was missing. There weren't a lot of tornadoes. So the connection or the correlation between El Nino and severe is a small one, and there's a lot of other things going on. So that's my answer for now. Okay, so let's go on to what was the only EF4 in the United States in 2015 until December. And this was Fairdale, Illinois. Who was on this storm? Not me. Anybody? Yeah, a few of you. This was quite a remarkable day, and the storm was quite an amazing picture there as it moved up across northern Illinois. So let me go through this case as far as the forecast goes. So you get into April, you expect severe weather, and this was pretty typical. This is a synoptically evident event, meaning that the large-scale global models should catch on to a signal that you're going to have a strong shortwave trough and surface low moving into the plains, and the moisture should be there, and the instability should be there. And sure it was, and the outlooks were all the way out to day 6. Of course, as we go closer to the event, there's always uncertainty. There's probability of a tornado in that part of the U.S., and you can see it's definitely increasing here by early April, and not quite as high as you might expect later in the month or maybe even into May across parts of Illinois. So that the outlook on this day, the climatological probability, we were 20 times greater with a 10 sig tornado outlook. That's a remarkably good forecast for this day, and I'll show you why. So there's the surface low, the warm front and the cold front again. There's the pattern. No surprise. This is a pretty typical severe weather outbreak pattern. It's hard to see the dew points there. I think they're in the low 60s, and they were able to come up throughout the afternoon in the warm sector. I talked to some meteorologists out of Chicago recently, and they said they woke up that day, and they said, there is no way we're going to see tornadoes in Illinois today. Well, in their area. And they didn't in Chicago, thank goodness. But they were in the 30s with fog just north of the warm front. The front was incredibly strong, and a very, very intense dividing line between the springtime air and the more winter-like conditions north. So we look at the storm scale ensemble guidance. It's not very helpful today. It's basically saying better risk is south in the warm sector, but keep an eye on the surface low, maybe some low probabilities across that area in northern Illinois. But if you look more in depth at what's available, you also see you can load the tracks, the actual updraft helicity tracks associated with simulated storms. Important to remember, they're not the real thing. And you can take something away from that. One, that there will be, in the model world at least, one of the ensembles is generating a particularly intense track right into Chicago. And I actually called one of my friends who works up there, and I said, today's looking like a pretty rough day for you guys. You got to be careful and keep your eye out what's going to happen. The event verified quite well with respect to at least initial conditions on the radar. There's the 20 UTC radar image. You can see there's definitely a strong cyclone associated with this system with a comma-shaped feature over Iowa and then kind of a broken squall line just getting going. And there was the 20-hour forecast from the WRF ARW. So it's got the right idea. So let's look at the environment. And here it is, same as the other slide. And early on, go here, the first bar is 19, second one is 20, just like the last one, 21Z. And you can see how the environment changes with time, but a couple of things that stand out on this chart, and on the last one too, is that the LFC was right there the whole time. It was right in that range, we're just below 1 kilometer where you would expect to see low cloud bases, and the other parameters trended up with time. So the trend was your friend if tornadoes are what you were forecasting for this event. And that's what you got. You can see how low the LFC is there. And all of those parameters were right on the money pretty much to support SIG tornado. So hours before the tornado event occurs, you can begin to look at the mesoanalysis data available from SPC and begin to make your own forecast. Are we in a range in which we can expect significant tornadoes to occur? And let me know if you ever find one that isn't in the range, because that would be very interesting on any of these cases. And I didn't pick them, I just picked them because they occurred. And then I went back and I did this analysis just a few weeks ago and found that this works pretty darn good, except on some days, and I'll show you one of those. I think because of my time, I'm going to rattle through these pretty quick now, okay? So I don't want to keep speakers waiting for the afternoon. This was the November 16th event, highly anomalous event. Look where the probabilities are. The forecast probabilities are in an area that you don't have tornado probabilities in climatology. Extremely anomalous to see tornadoes in that part of the country in mid-November, although not unprecedented. And in fact, leading up to this event, I'm a big fan of analogs and looking at patterns and saying, well, what's happened in the past? And I do agree with some critics. Analogs are not forecasts. They're basically a review of what's happened in the past. You cannot rely on them for future use. But this one was very interesting because the Saturday leading up to this event, we were looking at the forecast trough position and the intensity of the upper trough in the southwest U.S., and we're looking for a matching pattern in November. There's actually a November 19th, or very close to this time of year, 1934 event. Bethany, Oklahoma was hit by an EF4 tornado at 9:30 in the morning with 23 fatalities at a school. And the pattern looked just like this. So I was very concerned about 2 or 3 days out that central Oklahoma was at a risk for a significant tornado on this event. But the timing didn't work out, and it turned out to be the high plains. So there's the low again and the warm front, and we got things set up across the high plains, anomalous moisture streaming north from Texas Panhandle to western Kansas. SSEO? It said Oklahoma. Even the day of the event, the first available ensemble guidance says there's a very good probability for updrafts and rotating storms in the model simulated across western Oklahoma. Look what happens late in the morning, no, early afternoon with the update to this forecast. It dramatically increases the probabilities ahead of the front and the dry line and the low up there into western Kansas. So the forecast is trending in a direction that says you're going to see significant, possibly significant rotating storms across this area. And it is interesting, the evolution of the forecast came up sort of from the too far south, and then they trended north to try to catch up with the conditions. There was a 22 UTC radar. There was the forecast, pretty good. The forecast indicating isolated or cellular-like convection developing across the high plains. That's hard to see, but I put it together on a cell phone. Those are the rotation tracks from the model on the left, and then the actual warnings that were underway. And it's uncanny how the ensemble guidance caught this event on the day of the event in terms of showing the tracks for rotating storms. And we had a lot of tornadoes, a lot of long-track tornadoes. And the environmental conditions for SIGTOR, well, first thing, you don't get a lot of SIGTORs in the high plains because there's not a lot to hit, so the sample size is low. It's only 16 cases. Well, now 17, right? So we'll add the information from this event because there were a number of long-track significant tornadoes. And they were, for the most part, I don't see, well, no, even in the MLK plot there, you see that there's a little dot way down on the near 0 to 500 MLK. So there was a case that happened out there in the very low end of MLK. But basically, the storm scale environment was in the range to support significant tornadoes on this day. And kind of wasn't much of a trend, really. I mean, we trended up in the SIGTOR parameter, which is good to see. And the other parameters kind of remain, well, I guess effective shear was coming up, too, because the upper jet was coming out at this time. Okay, and that's what we saw, right? That's an amazing shot from, I think that's east of Pampa. If you took it, please shout out. Okay. The name Justin. Justin's down there. December 23rd, I think what I'm going to do, in the interest of time, we're going to go through this. This one was the more common of the December events, if you look at climatology. But the outlook certainly had well above climo. We're talking 150 times climatology for December 23rd. So when you see an outlook that is that high above climatology, it's a big signal. There is a big signal showing up in the guidance to suggest that you're in a regime that is providing us a lot of information that is quite different than what we're used to on any day of the year. And there's a lot of confidence. There's the low again. There's the warm front. The SSEO guidance was exceptional for this. There, I put that, this was the filtered version. I'm applying a higher value or magnitude to updraft helicity for this second graphic. So now we want updrafts in the range of 100 meters squared per second squared. So what we want when we look at these probabilities is show me the model guidance that is generating intense storm scale circulations, or UA updraft helicity. Again, simulated, but look at that forecast. If you tweak the guidance and you look for where the ensemble guidance is giving you the strongest signal, on this particular day, it was right on. And then looking at the radar at 16 UTC, what's interesting also, though, even though the updraft tracks were on, they don't tell you what time. That's a 24-hour summary of the entire SSEO hourly data for 24 time steps. So they're not going to tell you it's 4 or 5 o'clock. It's just going to say within this 24-hour period, that's where the potential exists. And actually, the storm scale guidance with respect to reflectivity was not all that great. You can see that the model guidance was actually ahead of the atmosphere in this case, which means what? I mean, it could support greater destabilization. So now you can begin to put other pieces of the puzzle together and say, well, if the model is ahead of schedule with the precipitation, maybe we get a little more heating before storms actually do move in. Maybe we have even greater potential for strong rotating storms. There we are in the range of the SIG-TOR again, and sure enough, all the parameters on this day, this is 31 cases of EF2 and stronger tornadoes occurring within the radar envelope of where this tornado occurred, and they're all on target. So even hours before the event at 16 UTC, you could have called up SPC's website, clicked on the graphics, and seen that you were very close at 16, and you were certainly within the range at 19Z for SIG-TOR. And at that point, you're thinking you're isolated or discrete supercells, or even, I think they were line segments in this case, but that convection that is beginning to develop is moving into a regime that is extremely supportive for F2 and stronger tornadoes. And there you go. Okay. 5? I got 5? Okay. Wrap it up here. I worked this day, and the long-range guidance was exceptional for this event. There was signal showing up a week out in some of the climate forecast system guidance that I work with. There was a big signal that we were going to be dealing with a number of days with severe weather from the 23rd right on through Christmas. Now again, specifically where was the question about a week out. Would it be Mississippi, Texas? But there are some of the CFS plots at the bottom showing you at day 6. I'm sorry, I didn't explain these earlier. I kind of blew through them. But what I do with the climate forecast system is essentially look at a 24-hour summary of supercell composite parameters. So I just take the average for each day and look at where in the model world is there an environment favorable for supercells. And then I'll throw the convective precipitation on the map so you can see where it's also generating thunder. But there's a signal out there 6 days in advance. And it was mostly east of where the events occurred in Dallas, which shouldn't be much of a surprise because you look at Climo, and again, we're way out, well, not way out, but we're definitely on the edge of climatology, 100 times climatology for the day when this enhanced outlook was issued by Steve Corfiti early on the morning of December 26th. And the enhanced is there for the tornado probabilities, which I believe were 10%. Oh, that is the tornado probability, so that was an enhanced risk. There's the low, there's the front. Another warm sector. SSEO guidance stunk. Hashtag fail, especially for Dallas. There is no significant signal there. It's all up on this front that's sitting across Oklahoma, this Arctic front that's really slow moving across us and then it's moving into North Texas. But all of the rotating storms are either on the front or over the cold air where nobody cares. I mean, there was no severe to speak of. Few little dings of hail, probably closer in size to sleet than anything else. Not important. I want to know where the F2 and stronger tornado is this day. That's not going to tell me where, unfortunately. And it really didn't improve very much. Now, that was the cranking the filter again. So now, okay, does the SSEO have any idea about strong rotation? No. So it's far from perfect. There's the radar 20Z. There was the 20-hour forecast from the ARW. Not bad. All of the convection is up on the boundary. But here's where it started to get really interesting. Dallas-Fort Worth put a 18Z sounding up that looks like it should be April. This is an April SIG-TOR sounding in December, in late December. And I looked at it and we were like, yeah, well, that's impressive. But we already have a tornado watch out. Yeah, what do you do? What do you do at this point? And it's still not entirely clear that the Metroplex is at risk. There are these incipient supercell, discrete cells that are actually rotating at this time well south of Dallas. But they're moving into this environment, and it is in prime shape to support significant tornadoes. And if we go back to this chart, look where we are. I mean, we're at or above the range of conditions expected for EF2 and stronger tornadoes. I think I started this at 18 with the sounding, 19 or 20 and 22Z just before the tornadoes moved into the Metroplex. And East Dallas was hit by the SIG-TOR. So I don't know what else. And on this, I went back on Sunday and I was very upset with myself because it's like, yeah, we knew there was a chance of tornadoes, but why didn't we really scream SIG-TOR? Right? Why? Because hindsight is 2020. It's like when you put those pieces together after the fact, you realize, oh, even though it's December, it's acting a heck of a lot like April with discrete supercells moving toward the Metroplex. Now again, as far as SPC's role goes, I'm not quite sure what else we could have done. Even if I put a 15% SIG, it was already 10% SIG-TOR. So I have 15% significant tornado to the day one outlook. So what? It stays enhanced risk. There's a tornado watch already out. So what? Could you go to PDS? Maybe. Maybe that's one thing that might have elevated the risk and said, hey, this is serious. This is a bad evening coming up. But I think I'll leave you with this because these are the dilemmas that the operational forecaster continues to face, regardless of all of the advances we've made throughout the last 2 decades. There are still going to be days like this, where you leave as a forecaster, you come back the next day and you look and you're like, what else could I have done? You know, we lost 12 fatalities with this. The overwhelming majority were people that drove into the tornado. They may not have even had any clue. I did hear from other people who said, no, we knew there was a risk and it was a bad day and we canceled our travel and we stayed put because we didn't want to drive across the Metroplex in the late afternoon. What about those 9 that died? Is it possible that there's something that could have been done earlier to alert them to the risk after dark? I don't know. Those are answers that we continue to seek answers to those questions. So with that, I'll take some questions if there's some time. I don't want to suck up other people's time. I hate doing that. So thank you very much for your attention. Thanks for having me at ChaserCon. And stay safe. I think I saw a hand. Yep.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. Number one, are you the one, not necessarily you, but how much are you involved in whether that watch is PDS or regular?
It's the call of the lead forecaster. So the lead is responsible for issuing tornado watches, coordinating with the local forecast offices. So in this case, Dallas and others that were in the watch. It's very much like our outlooks. So we base those outlooks on our confidence the event is going to occur. If the lead forecaster is extremely confident in a significant tornado event, that's going to be a PDS watch. And then it can flip it around the other way. If the outlook is a high risk for tornadoes, it's automatically a PDS watch. So that's kind of some of the background there. Yep.
Were there special challenges, like what you were just talking about on the 26th, for May 3rd, 99?
Well, it was a completely different time. The amount of information I've shown you here didn't exist. Much of the storm scale information didn't exist. It is interesting to think, what would we be doing today? Would we be more ahead of that? Would it have been a high risk, which has certainly ended up verifying? I don't know about high, but I think we would have done better. I think we would have. I think that you're talking about improved probability with respect to the tornado risk on that day, watches out ahead of time. I think there would be a remarkable difference today from 1999.
Was some of the data, was it not really conclusive
Yeah, that day had some problems, not just from the data, but the environment. The satellite imagery had a large cirrus plume across Oklahoma, keeping, heating was low, and, so there were some uncertainties about initiation, but the storms actually came up through that. And the cirrus was basically a jet streak, and the storms initiated regardless, not a lot of inhibition. So environment and observational analysis is crucial to this science. I've shown a lot of model data, but there are times where it will fail miserably, and you cannot rely on that. You have to compare it with what the atmosphere is actually doing. And we still lack in the tools necessary to do that.
Was there a climatological, like you were saying, with the December?
Oh, the December? I'm not quite sure.
For May 3rd, 99.
Well, May 3rd, if you're in Oklahoma in May, climatology says, yeah, you're probably going to see something sometime during the month at least. So, okay, I know it's a break. I'll be around for a little while, and we can chat if you want. So thanks a lot.
The average stroke of lightning is 6 to 10 miles long. You are always in danger from approaching storms, even with clear skies overhead. The Earth receives more than 8 million lightning strikes per day. This number is increasing with global warming. Any storm within 8 miles can reach you with a lightning strike. Squall lines are moving storm fronts that can be hundreds of miles in length and move at speeds of 50 miles per hour. Tornadoes develop quickly and without warning in small areas of a squall line as it moves. Nimbus 4. Get yours before the storm.
Barron ThreatNet is your solution for fast, reliable, and precise weather information. From any desktop or tablet, ThreatNet gives you instant access to professional-grade weather data and easy-to-use tools to help your organization make informed decisions to keep people and assets safe. Precision is at the core of ThreatNet. High-resolution data and intelligent, intuitive tools give you instant access to hyperlocal information at the county, city, or street level. View the location and intensity of rainfall with live, local radar. See exactly where lightning strikes are occurring. Prepare for how weather will affect your area with proven forecast data. And track storms with unparalleled precision. With the exclusive and impactful data products in ThreatNet, your organization can confidently put an effective weather preparedness plan into action. All this power is packed into a single, intuitive, and accessible product designed to be a one-stop resource for fast and actionable weather intelligence. From any computer or tablet, log into ThreatNet to quickly get the critical information you need. Dedicated to enhancing public safety, ThreatNet from Barron is your tool for fast and reliable weather intelligence when it matters most. Barron, critical weather intelligence.
Okay, folks, we need to come in and grab our seats. We're going to start here in about 2 minutes. Hey, folks, also, for those of you tonight who are going to bring videos to the video night, please bring them up to Corey at the dinner break, and we'll get you all set up. A lot of you going to stay around for video night tonight? Come on, it's a ChaserCon tradition. We have a great time. Okay, we got to get going, folks. Let's go ahead and grab our seats, and we are going to start right now. How many of you have heard our next guest talk before at ChaserCon or somewhere else? Mr. Tim Marshall. Doesn't he do a fantastic job? Oh, my goodness. Everybody just looks so much forward to his talk. I do, too. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Tim Marshall.
Thank you very much. All right, right there. You know, I did come from Vegas last week, and I'm working on a new song. I want to tell you about this new song I got. It's called "The Ballad to David Hoadley." Ready? I once knew a man named David Hoadley, who used to chase all so boldly, till one day his car blew a tire, scared him to death, thought he'd retire, but that didn't happen to David Hoadley. All right, well, let's get the show on the road, shall we? Did you like that? There you go. That's right, Jeff. Very good. Thank you kindly. Kindly claim. Norman, Oklahoma. All right. The king of the storm chasing community. Here we are. So, what did you think? Jabba the Hutt or something? No, that wasn't going to happen. All right, well, we're going to get this show started. I got a lot to go. I would sing some more, because I know you probably like my singing, but I think let's go through a few chase cases first. All right. So the title of my talk, if I can advance this, is 2015, a rock and roll chase year. It was probably a pretty stormy year. I mean, I didn't see too much early on. Then May came, had some great success, and then the fall, pretty stale. And then, my gosh, this winter was incredible. November and December saw tornadoes for the first time in either month. So here's where my chases were for the past year. 26 of them. Almost all of them in Texas, and the reason for that is because I'm based there, not in Vegas. 31 days of storm chasing, that's a whole month. Imagine taking a month every year and going storm chasing. That's what I do. Traveled about 10,000 miles. I saw 12 tornadoes, not too bad. My longest chase, well, it was a feudal chase all the way up to Broadus, Montana. They have a good pizza place there. And that's a long way to go for pizza. And then my shortest one was just 50 miles from my house or so. Most of the tornadoes, of course, are rain-wrapped and they're at night. Saw tornadoes in November and December. A great year other than that. Well, Roger Hill knows how to take photos. And let me tell you, I've been looking all around for a Roger Hill pill. Yeah, Roger Hill pill. So I can take that and take photographs like Roger Hill does. Phenomenal. How many of you chased May 16, 2015? Let's see your hands shake. Wow. Better than half of you. Very good. An excellent, excellent day. All right, here's the situation. And we're going to have a little more of an American theme here. I get excited, so does Hillary, about seeing higher dew points moving on in here. 60-plus dew points are moving into western Oklahoma at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I targeted Sayre, Oklahoma, figuring that, hey, you know, the dry line's moving out. There's a nice outflow boundary there in northeastern Texas Panhandle coming on in. This sets the stage for some great forcing, plus the upper air was coming in later on. Hey, fantastic. All right, moisture level. Okay, wrong finger, Marco. But this is the moisture level coming on in. You can see 850 millibars. Pretty good moisture surge coming up through Midland. And look at that winds there. Pretty strong winds coming on up through there. Not bad. 700 millibars. Look at that. Deep trough in the west. That's worth smiling about, huh? Good thumbs up there. And then how about the upper level winds? Upper level winds very important because they ventilate the updraft. So this is an excellent way to go ahead and get those nice anvils streaming on out. Way, way up there. Yes, well, George doesn't know what to make of it, but hey, just follow the blue. The blue is good. The blue is good. I'd like to see all those high winds way, way up top. So let's look at the winds aloft, shall we? Winds aloft are very important. They help ventilate the storms, and here we have very strong winds aloft. This is the 12Z Amarillo sounding. Not much of a cap, though, but we do have pretty strong winds aloft. We like to see that. Then, of course, whatever SPC does, well, let's look at that. I can't chase the whole moderate risk area. I've got to be particular where I'm going to chase. I prefer the southern end because I am a Texas-based dryline vintage storm chaser. So let's do that. Hey, this looks really good. Anytime you see hatch, it's got to be good, right? So we're going to go ahead and target that area. So here were the pros and cons for the day, being a May 16th forecast. There was an ample surface moisture and a dry line out west. These were players. So was the outflow boundary. There was an upper low in the northern Rockies with strong mid and upper level jets. Better winds aloft in the Texas Panhandle and northwest Oklahoma. So I'm going to kind of play that area more than further north. Morning clouds, though, but they're going to burn off later in the day. The cap is not too strong, and that's always important, have not a very strong cap. Sometimes I like to see a cap that is formidable that'll break around 3 or 4. But there are some cons here, and that is, you know, this is a questionable storm mode given all this power coming into the west. I figure there's going to be a lot of forcing. We'll get line lifting along that dry line to get a squall line. Too many storms, too many targets, too many seeding storms because we were getting unidirectional flow. Even though you have strong winds aloft, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing because storms start seeding one another if you don't have any kind of diffluence aloft. So the target's still Sayre. All right, so there, point to it. This is the 3 o'clock. Do you notice anything here? Not too much going on at 3 o'clock. And one of the reasons why is because low clouds were hugging in here. So you didn't see the burning off. We didn't see the overturning convection. The atmosphere wasn't doing anything at 3 o'clock. It was going to be a late show. That's what this really kind of telltale sign, reading into it. You can be very strong about it, Bernie, but this is what you do like to see, 0 to 6. Don't get a heart attack over it, but it certainly is something that we like to see working in towards the latter part of the day. And then, yeah, SCP here, the supercell composite parameter, not going and doing very much, looks very much like if you're looking for a bullseye, you're not going to find it, okay? And if you're looking at the SIG Tours, you're not going to find much there either. This is the thing. It's 3 o'clock. You've got to make a decision. You've got to know where to go. You just can't sit around and wait for bullseyes to pop up on SPC's site. And the early boxes come out. $12.50 for a T-box. I don't like to see that. I like to see it more like in 3 or 4. But it's because of that power and dynamics. And the dry line was starting to fire out west. Then you have all this elevated activity in northwest Oklahoma extending up into Kansas. That's something to keep an eye on too, because just because it's elevated doesn't mean it's no good. It means it's no good now, but it could be something later on. And then later boxes at 4, look at what the dry line did. It fired on up in the eastern Texas Panhandle, and then you had all these supercells on down from there. So I'll use the radar system. This is an archive product I get from NOAA. You can get it online. It's at the NCDC site. But here is a town called Headley. You know where that's at? It's on Route 287. It's northwest of Memphis. And I know Memphis. Tornado warning was issued at the time. That's where I was. I was in Memphis at the time. My chase partner, Carson Eads. Is he around here? Carson Eads. Stand up. There he is, over there. Okay, Carson. He's my right-hand man. Out. We stopped. He started the gas pump, started refueling, and a tornado warning is being issued right away. So fantastic. So we raced up. You got to watch out for that Memphis cop. He's pretty tough. He's there. Raced on up. Hook echo. Closing in fast on Headley. Boom. 220. We're right there. What's going on? This hook looks pretty good. Nice open hook. Looks like more like a classic supercell. Should be able to see a tornado there, right? Wasn't very easy to see. Circulation across the highway. A lot of rain wrapping going on. Dustin Wilcox. Is he here today, Dustin? Great job trying to get one there out of the rain. Sam, is he here? All right. So we were right there. One thing I want to show you is we've seen some of these images about radial velocity. But radial velocity is a decreasing function. As you move away from the radar, that beam is getting higher and higher. And here we are at Headley, and we're looking at Amarillo radar. So by that time, that beam is thousands and thousands of feet up. We're not seeing low-level circulation here. If you were dependent only on your little mobile app that you have and you're looking for circulation, you're not going to see much at this range. That's radar. It samples conic sections. That beam, even though the beam is straight, the Earth is curved, and so you get this elevated beam as you go on out further and further away. Now, one neat little calculator that's online is at the Warning Decision Training Branch there, that URL there. You can calculate the height of the beam if you wish, for those of you who are nerds like me. Go ahead and calculate the height of the beam at the range, because radar cannot see what's happening at low elevations at Headley. And what I'm seeing on that diagram there, that output, is not low level at all. It's up there thousands and thousands of feet. So we go back to reflectivity. So there's this hook. It's a nice hail core. You see another cell back to the southwest. Well, we decided to follow it. This is early in the day now. Look at this. 2:27, we just seen a tornado, and now we're trying to catch back up to it. And we go through the rain wrapping. I don't recommend that, but the tornado, very dirty, dusty thing, crosses the highway northeast of Headley. We kept with it, but the storm was out racing us. You see other cells are developing, and we're at that dot there, and we're moving now east and then back north to try to get up towards Shamrock. There we caught up to it again. So they had 3 tornadoes with this system, but they were rain wrapped, especially towards the end there. So now the next play is, well, okay, since this is lined out, what are we going to do next? We're not going to quit. It's 3 o'clock. There has to be other cells maybe further east. So let's go further east. But what was concerning me about it was the number of storms that was going up. There were storms, like 4 of them, supercells in North Texas, and they were moving across the Red River. So which side of the Red River do you want to be at? Do you want to be on the south side of the Red River? Do you want to be on the north side of the Red River? It makes a big difference here. So we decided to keep south of the Red River. We went to Quanah and 424, beautiful base. We're looking southwest here, and we see this nice ragged lowering moving on in. This is the first of 4 cells coming on up. All right, coming on up from Chillicothe, and again, our location right there. It's Carson and I right there with the open hook. Looks more impressive on radar, actually. FDR, that's the Frederick radar. And you see where Elmer's at up there, and you see where Altus is at. Those are in Oklahoma. So it's right across the border. So we had to maneuver and get in a proper place, and there's a town called Odell, Texas. It's right south of the border there, and that's where we camped. We watched this storm. That's quite the hook we're seeing. And this is the storm at that time. You know, kind of a nice flank on it, anvil, pretty solid, not too bad. Okay, we decided we were going to try to race and beat this across the Red River. HP supercell near Odell. You can see now it's descending reflectivity core happened, so we got this big, huge burst of precip on the backside. Action area is just to the left of Carson there, and a little beaver tail coming in from the opposite side, moving right to left. Now you see all this, look how fat that hook is. What does that mean when you see a big fat hook? That's a lot of precip loading right in there. Again, even though you're pretty close to the radar, you get some noise, but you're close enough though that you will be able to pick up pretty strong circulation. I mean, we're only about, 20, 30 nautical miles there. It's not too far. And in rain wrap situations, you really need to look at that. All right, so here we are looking at the nose of the hook, 536. You see anything on, yeah, you see a couplet forming there. Sure enough, it wraps back in the figure 6 with a little donut back there. Okay. Look at that hail core. Was there any hail with that storm? You bet you there was hail. You don't want to be in the back end of that hook. And it moves on in. So our view looking to the north was this. Rain wrap tornado. Roger Hill's view looking south, this. That's why I want a Roger Hill pill, okay? I'm in the wrong place. All right, nice rain wrap tornado. He gets a nice, beautiful tornado there, and there's the track. You know, it started in Oklahoma, then decided to go to Texas, and then went back into Oklahoma. It's a tri-state tornado. Yeah, you know about that. Now, Sam did some outstanding work. Now, I'm telling you, structure shots are amazing out there, and I really appreciate those of you who take them and post them so I can use them in talks like this. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I do credit you, that's right. Sam has some great, great shots. There were so many chasers. I saw just about every single one of you out there. It was amazing the number of chasers. Hey, look, there's Weed Trimmer. My view of the HP supercell west of Electra. Yeah, nice. I love those panorama settings on cameras. They're really great. Keep taking those panoramas. They really show a lot. Look at the spiral updraft and the beaver tail coming on in. There are 3 other storms besides that one at Elmer, you know, that produced tornadoes, but they were very weak or hardly there. How many of you are using the additional apps on Radar Scope or others, correlation coefficient, differential reflectivity? Anybody? Let's see how many of you are using those additional apps. Great, good set of you. This has definitely added value in storm chasing. You know, again, I was talking about the limitations on radio velocity. Well, correlation coefficient has similar limitations, but it is another player here. And it works like this. Correlation coefficient of 1 indicates objects of the same shape and size, so small drops, small hailstones, round things falling, you get 1. But the low correlation coefficient indicates a mixture of particles, and they could be debris, and that's what we're looking for. Or as I call it, a blue hole on this diagram. So here we are, we're looking at 525. We're going to go through the same radar output here, and you can see what's happening. Now you see there's a lot of blue here. Okay, because you're out there in the clear air. So a lot of this is noise. It's having a tough time distinguishing between noise and what is just debris. But you can start to pick it up here at 531, can you not? Look at that. Like a donut hole there. Really well pronounced as it moves just east of Elmer and moves on up. And of course, we'll look at a little bit of IR imagery. Watch this wave coming out of the Rockies. Bam, the first initiation occurs in the Texas Panhandle. And then from there on, we get back building towards the south, the Elmer cell, and then we have other cells all the way down into central Texas, even in the southwest Texas. Okay, so great forecasting by SPC. Thank you again. And of course, Ron approves. Now, the summary, we'll get 2 thumbs up because we had 2 storms that went tornadic. Caught the first tornadic storm that initially developed west of my target area, west of Sayre, but it moved towards it, so I have a consolation prize, if you will. But I then dropped south, be willing to be flexible on your target. Don't be afraid to change your target. But again, you're running up against time in the day. Drop south and east to follow the second tornadic storm that moved in to Oklahoma eventually. Okay, hey, it's time for Storm Chaser Jeopardy. This is a continuing type of game show that we've been having in all these ChaserCons. You know how it is. I give you the answer, and you tell me the question. All right, so obviously, the category is Elvis for 100, and the answer is Graceland. Has to be in the form of a question. What is Elvis's home? Wrong. What is the Texas Panhandle? That's my Graceland. You know, I suppose also western Oklahoma and eastern Colorado and western Kansas can also apply, but that's my Graceland. All right, for those of you, stormtrack.org is alive. All right, has an app. That's right, it has an app. Mr. Miller knows all about that. If you need any more information, go to stormtrack.org. Okay, on to Canadian Texas tornadoes. May 27, 2015. How many of you were out there? Canadian. Wow. Tons of you were out there. I saw you all. Yes, absolutely. All right, let's look at this. This is why I wanted to target Canadian. And this was at 10 in the morning. I'm in Dallas, Texas. The only fly in the ointment was I had a meeting to go to in Amarillo at 1 o'clock, and I didn't know what time it would end. So I would have to drive from Dallas to get up to Amarillo, attend this meeting, and then hopefully bite my nails off in time to get out of Amarillo to get up to my target of Canadian. Would the storm develop? Would it wait for me? Big questions. Dryland was out there. Look at those 62 plus dew points. This is the classic spring situation that I live for. Right here. Target Canadian. Target Canadian. Don was a little late at picking that up, but he did eventually pick it up. Okay, water. Yes, 850 millibar is water. Got to use lots of water. Water is good. It is the moisture that feeds these thunderstorms. And look at the amount of packing of those. Yes, water coming on up. Then we have, holy cow, what's going on here at 700? It looks like an implosion going on. Where are the winds? Am I going to see nothing in the eastern Texas Panhandle? 15 knots, are you kidding me? And look at out west further. Look at Albuquerque. Very weak winds. Nothing is out there. Go on up a little higher, 500. Just 25 knots, is that all? At 500 millibars. So you stay home, right? You don't go storm chasing. You say, although you got some nice low-level shear maybe, the upper air stinks. Stay home. This is totally different than the case that we were thinking about spring. Winds aloft. All right, let's talk about winds aloft. These are really strong winds. Anytime you see one of those flags, you know you've had strong winds. Look at the cap. Yes, the cap. Formidable cap right here, and this is in Oklahoma City, and this is in Dodge City. What's it in Canadian? We don't know. We don't know. This is what we're going to have to do, is kind of get out there and see what happens. There's no answer here. We don't have a balloon sounding in Canadian. But SPC did have an enhanced risk area all the way from, central Kansas back down in the eastern Texas Panhandle. I like that. I like a marginal spring situation. I don't have all those heavy dynamics coming in. This is marginal, and if the storms do go up, you're almost looking at them as a scale accident to happen for a tornado to occur. All right, so here's 5%. Sure, I mean, it's okay. It's nothing really too spectacular, but, it'll do. So here's the pros and cons. I mean, there's going to be dry line out there. Will there be some dry line magic? This is the kind of day that you would have something like the magic we all talk about. And having chased out of Lubbock for almost 4 decades, I can tell you, I like the magic. You can get an isolated storm right around sunset, no other competing storms, and it'll stay right where it's at, anchor, if you will. We call it an anchor storm, right? Deep moisture off the cap rock, ample 300 millibar winds, but everything else pretty weak, and a strong cap. So weak mid-level flow, 15 knots at 700, 25 knots at 500, yuck. Cap may be too strong. Target Canadian. All right, here are the tornado watch boxes coming out, 225, so that's not too bad. And then coming on further south to the Texas, Oklahoma Panhandle. All right, so now let's look at moisture feeding, storm feeding Cape. Storms love Cape, and they eat a lot of it. So we go ahead. Oh, so does Joe. Yeah, Chris Christie also eats a lot too. But, we know that. But the 4,000 joules per kilogram is out there. And there we go, east Texas Panhandle. That's not too bad at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. Sig Tor. Pretty confusing. Got to have a pencil for this one. I mean, where are you going to go? Are you going to rely on Sig Tor bullseyes? Forget it. What about SCP? I mean, yeah, this is really a headache, isn't it, Mr. Cruz? Yeah. How about that equation? That's pretty good headache too there, right? See, it depends on some Cape, depends on storm relative helicity, depends on some winds, yes. Have to have all that. Well, what would you do here? 0 to 3 kilometers SRH, forget it. Stay home. Read a book. Watch live streaming of tornado chasers in the Texas Panhandle. Get sunburns. Well, here's what happens. All right. Where's the dot? That's where I'm at. I'm in Amarillo. Okay? I just left Amarillo. I'm up to about Panhandle right now on 60, and I see this convection happening on the radar. My first view at 3:30 was this. I'm going, oh my gosh. Am I going to be making this on time? My meeting went to 3. I didn't leave Amarillo until 3 o'clock. I'm roaring up there. Thank goodness there's not a lot of people there on the road because they were all up in Canadian. That's the beauty of chasing late and behind. So would this storm wait for me? I mean, if that went 40 miles an hour up toward Glacier and Higgins and up into Woodward, I would have never have seen this thing. But it anchored, and look at it just sitting there, kind of going through almost like a multi-cell, supercell process. Other cells developing and dying, but staying pretty much. And here I am, charging north at 427. Already there was a tornado warning issued because there was a brief funnel there. And I was like, would it wait for me? So this is my first glimpse at 430, north of Canadian. Get in position. I first went west because I thought, well, maybe the storm will backfill, but it didn't. I came back to the east. Again, look at radial velocity. Can't see much. You're 75 nautical miles from Amarillo. You use the radar beam calculator. That's at 9,300 feet. That's way up there. You're not going to see low-level rotation on a radial velocity. So you have to go with your gut. Like, oh, this looks pretty nice. I have this rainy RFD passing me at 449. I'm going to just stay here right on 60. Set up my tripod and just kind of wait. So there's me, there's the hook. Nice position. Then this starts to happen. The RFD passes me. I'm now getting west-southwest winds. Not really cool, but they're kind of almost warm, if you will. It's like, okay, got west winds, game over, right? No. Game is not over when you have west winds. Watch what's happening. These low clouds are streaming right to left. They're going south. We're looking west. Scud, right? Bad stuff, right? Scud is good. Despite what you have heard, Scud is good. Too much Scud is bad. But you just want just enough Scud. Cool air, that's what it signifies. Updrafts will also take cool air. And that's what this did. So I'm there. It looks like a pretty blobby, and there's another cell to the back of it. What's it going to do? Oh my gosh, it looks like a real messy situation going on there. 511. But boom! Nice contrast. Tornado pops out. See all the way up. The RFD wraps around it. That clear slot right over my head. This thing is just sitting right to the west of me, doing all kinds of structure and close-up shots going through its. And there's the echo. You can see not a well-defined supercell hook, but there's a hook in there, and it looks like other hooks in there too, maybe other cells coming in. So there was some sort of mesoscale incident going on here. The storm was anchored, and there's a whole bunch of reasons for why it was anchored. And then there's other cells that are coming up, maybe an existing outflow boundary. At its maximum, I mean, holy cow, look at that. I get all shook up. 517. Look at that. 518. Now it starts to shrink. 519. Now there's a couple of different hooks there, but I'm in that forward one, and there's 3 other cells developing now south of Canadian. So it's in this rope stage, and I thought, okay, is this going to do it again? I love these rope stages because it really gets really hairy. The wall cloud then jumps over to the east. A new one's forming, and tremendous rotation. I had a funnel there. I thought we were going to have a big tornado just east of 60. But that didn't happen, perhaps because of the other cells developing, seeding into the storm. So there I am up there, and I'm figuring, okay, maybe this is not the greatest place to be. I should try drop south, especially when you see that at 5:30. So I dropped south a little bit, got a hilltop there just south of Canadian, and watched the evolution go on. Another cell coming on in, look at that. Moving on up, and sure enough, there are other tornadoes that developed, and then the whole mess. You can see this big mess. It still tried, it was anchored despite all the other cells smashing into it. It's remained anchored there. Really interesting morphology, how this happened. Which one on it? Okay, and then looking at the IR, look at the tiny little disturbance coming through here, and you get this kind of cell developing in the eastern Texas panel. Also, all you need is that little wave to set things off. Hey, great chase. Time to have a drink. Get your steak dinner. All right. Definitely my best chase of the season. Saw 4 tornadoes on a nearly stationary supercell. Worked out perfectly. Drove from Dallas to Amarillo, attended a meeting 1 to 3, left a meeting 3 o'clock, drove right up to Canadian. Boom, tornado. Go home. Once again, it's time for Storm Chase Jeopardy! All right. Now, I must tell you that the questions do get harder as you go further along on the Jeopardy game. This is Elvis for 200. The answer is Memphis. What's the question? Okay, close. What is the home of the Cyclones in Memphis, Texas? That's right, again, thinking Elvis, but thinking Chaser. Elvis Chaser. Well, maybe I should go out chasing in this costume. Who knows? All right, now on to the final case of the day. Who chased November 16, 2015? All right, fantastic. So we got some night owls back there. They're all in the back of the room in the dark, see? Yeah. I like that. Roger Hill, why do I take video? He takes pictures. All my pictures at night come out blurry, so I got to figure out. I'm going to go with this guy and find out what his secret is. All right. All right, here's the target. Hey, it's Childress once again. Another great setup. This looks similar now. The surface looks similar to the other 2 chase cases. You're welcome. And Other two chase cases. And here we have, again, though, something different in the atmosphere. It's not just the surface. It's what's happening aloft. So here, moisture. This is the moisture level. Low-level jet working on in here. The low is way, way up there in the northwest. I don't care where the low is out west. I really don't. As long as you have a wave working in, you have forcing, you've got going ahead and having winds aloft coming in. That's the lifeblood of storms that I want to chase. So I don't care where the low is up there, where the big circle is. Here we are going up further, 700 millibars, stronger winds. Look at how size of that. That's a pretty large for November. This looks like a spring type situation, doesn't it? Tremendous winds coming up at 500. No stinking 15, 25 knots like you had on the Canadian-Texas day. You have some real military-style, formidable winds aloft. What an air force that is, huh? Yeah, it doesn't matter where you point. Anywhere you point, good. You know, just winds aloft, lots of difluence going on. It all looks good. So let's look for winds aloft again. Not bad. It looks a bit mixed up. Look at that photograph up there in the upper right. That looks like, you know, a mishmash, a crumpled beer can, a Trump hairdo style kind of winds aloft. That's what I think of it. Let's look at some model data, all right? How many of you look at the HER? Raise your hand. Come on, admit it. Come on, come on, come on. How many of you religiously chase because of the HER? Raise your hand. Nobody, okay? Nobody. Yeah, it's because, you know, I've heard Con say this. Sometimes the HER can hurt you. Sometimes it can hurt you. But most of the time, it can hurt you. And that's what happened. But not today. Pretty good. Nice long track there going through east of Amarillo. That's what happened. Down by Childress, well, that didn't happen. And I didn't look at that until after the fact. All right, so here's the pros. Powerful upper low approaching the area with minus 28C cold pool. Powerful jets at all levels. Surface dry line in western Texas Panhandle. Ample moisture. Target Childress. But there was late timing, of course, after dark, you know, early dark there. Capping version wasn't there. Fast-moving storms. Underlined that actually twice. All right, so here we are, 3 o'clock. Holy cow, look at this. I had to shift back to the further west because it was much more slowly evolving. The cape was moving further to the west. The moisture was moving to the west. All right, so looking at the supercell composite, there we are. Yes, but there's no bullseye. It's just a gradient of higher, you know, SCP moving north. Sig Tours, pretty messy. Again, if you're going to chase a bullseye, perhaps maybe San Antonio would be a good place. All right. Looking at the SRHs, again, no bullseye. Just kind of a gradient there in the eastern Texas Panhandle. So bullseyes aren't always the answer. In fact, they rarely are the answer. I'd call it bullseitis. 0 to 6 kilometer shear. Coming in, late system, not too bad. All right, so here's what in the world? Oh, don't worry about that. That ain't nothing but a prairie dog. All right. Ain't nothing but a prairie dog. Don't be cruel. Don't be cruel. Don't be cruel. All right, tornado watch. Out. 1 o'clock, not bad. All right, so here I decided, because of the fast-moving situation, my strategy is going to change. I'm going to get way out ahead of this thing and let the storms come to me. You don't have to be there for every little cloud moment. You can wait, and especially when you got Paladaro Canyon in your way, you don't want to be stuck on the south side of Paladaro Canyon, believe me. A nice storm developed by Tulia. It's moving up to the north. I am going to move a little bit further to intercept, maybe back to the southwest. And then there's a second cell that develops at 5:05. Nice hook coming at me. Look at that. Good play. Let's zoom in. Well, I'm south of Goodnight. There's the hook. And here's what it looks like. Southwest view. Ragged lowering. Scud was almost at the surface coming on up. So there was a lot of it. A lot more than the Canadian. Big updraft. Big clear slot. We're looking southwest. And it's coming towards me. So excellent. Nice little intercept going on here. It wraps up just briefly, has these little kind of tentacles extending from it, and we had our first tornado of the day. Before dark, just before dark. It moved on up to the north, and we got a second brief tornado up towards Goodnight. But then we have this other cell coming in, which will be a player later on. 558. Now we're moved further up towards Groom. That's where we saw the second tornado, right about there. Got up to I-40. We can see now a nice large tornado to the north. It's now dark. It's being illuminated by lightning. And now we have beautiful Highway 70. So we get on Highway 70 and we are watching this tornado. Meanwhile, I am paying attention to what's happening in my southwest. But, you know, what are the odds of having two tornadoes on the ground from two supercells simultaneously? I mean, come on. Can that really happen? I'm going to stick with the one that brung me. So I'm going to go ahead and go north and follow this tornado as it's crossing Highway 70. It threw a lot of debris across. There were a couple of chasers ahead of me. They ran over telephone poles and destroyed their vehicles. I saw them there. And I just rolled down the window real quick and said, "Are you okay?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Good. I'm on the way." Keep on going. So I get up, and then, wait a minute now. What is going on? I'm getting a hook now to my southwest. So here I stop, and I'm in the forward flank downdraft. It's not raining very heavy. I can still see the tornado on the ground southeast of Pampa. But now I've also got a tornado to my southwest. And these tornadoes at night, they don't tap you on the shoulder and they say, "Hey, I'm a tornado." It was very quiet. You could just see full condensation to the ground, no noise. You're out there, I mean, among the crickets. That's it. Roger had this great shot. We watched it go through on the northwest side of the wind farm. Nice little debris ball there. So we had at this location a tornado to our northeast, a tornado to our southwest, and there's Pampa up there. And we watched this tornado come right up to us and then rope out, and a new tornado formed. We're going up towards Pampa. A new tornado formed just to the northeast. Pampa was really lucky this night. Absolutely. And we lost track of the other tornado up there. Those of you who went forward up on can tell me more about that. But we lost track of that one because we were watching this one here near Pampa. And of course, Roger has this phenomenal shot to die for, screensaver, that he has those tornadoes. So we watched that tornadic storm move northeast to hit the Halliburton plant, which I surveyed back in 1982. It got hit again in this time. Yeah, twice. Gives you a good idea. And Jeff, great job, buddy. Man, he followed it off the Cap Rock at night. All right, so I surveyed it in 1982, 2015, so that's your kind of average return period then of getting hit. If you want to build a house out there, you can expect it to be destroyed. All right, so here's the quick and dirty, the disturbance off the Rockies coming on in. Watch this on loop in here very nicely. Storm develops. More storms develop. The whole thing fills on in and back to Dallas. So the Amarillo Weather Service had put out this, and it was like 17 tornadoes out of this system. Couple of different storms. Okay, now that's what I like. Okay, so here's the summary. So it was a great day to sit on the dry line. I wasted a whole hour just, sitting by the side of the road, Clarendon, Texas. I shifted my target from Childress to Clarendon. I waited for storms to develop, of course, right on the edge of the Cap Rock, and then after dark, followed them. Two of them produced the long track tornadoes that I saw, 4 between Groom and Pampa alone. And, of course, it's time for Storm Chase Jeopardy. Now, this one is really difficult. If you all get this, it's almost like winning the Powerball, okay? This is Elvis for 300. The answer is Priscilla. That is the answer. What is the question? What did you call a fully hybrid electric vehicle in Amarillo? A Priusilla. Priusilla. Okay. All right. Folks, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Roger. Tim Samaras also helped. Appreciate that. Pick up my new album, Elvis Lives Again. Enjoy ChaserCon. Elvis lives. Any questions? Any answers? Plays Storm Chaser Jeopardy. All right. I guess everybody's ready to go to the car show or something, huh?
Barron ThreatNet is your solution for fast, reliable, and precise weather information. From any desktop or tablet, ThreatNet gives you instant access to professional-grade weather data and easy-to-use tools to help your organization make informed decisions to keep people and assets safe. Precision is at the core of ThreatNet. High-resolution data and intelligent, intuitive tools give you instant access to hyperlocal information at the county, city, or street level. View the location and intensity of rainfall with live, local radar. See exactly where lightning strikes are occurring. Prepare for how weather will affect your area with proven forecast data. And track storms with unparalleled precision. With the exclusive and impactful data products in ThreatNet, your organization can confidently put an effective weather preparedness plan into action. All this power is packed into a single, intuitive, and accessible product designed to be a one-stop resource for fast and actionable weather intelligence. From any computer or tablet, log into ThreatNet to quickly get the critical information you need. Dedicated to enhancing public safety, ThreatNet from Barron is your tool for fast and reliable weather intelligence when it matters most. Barron, critical weather intelligence.
Very many people are on. Get out your phones and everybody turn on your spotter network and somebody take a screen grab of that. I think it'd be cool to see what that looks like. Just what it looks like with a bunch of red dots layered on top of each other. Is that coming along over there? We get 2 minutes. Okay. Let's see, what else can we talk about for a couple of minutes? Okay. The presentation today, we're going to be talking about Oklahoma City and the media perspective. I work at the local ABC station. I'm the morning meteorologist. I do the weather in the mornings, the afternoons on storm days. I will chase either in a helicopter or on the ground. I prefer the car. I feel like you have a little more control chasing it in the vehicle. But media is changing very quickly. A consolidation is occurring. A lot of folks, if you read the traditional broadcast over the last 50 years, is definitely not what it has been and what it's going to be. People aren't waiting around for the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, the 10 o'clock news like they used to. A lot of times they're getting the media through the day, and on-demand content rules in the evening time. So with this change in media, I'm going to show you through a Nielsen research that I've pulled on and I didn't know what I was going to get when I started looking at all of this, because I was kind of worried. I'm like, are people still watching? You hear them repeat over and over again, media coverage, everybody turns on the TV and watch, but do they really? Are they really watching? So we're going to see here in just a couple of minutes, are folks really watching? You know, you hear about the Weather Channel, and they just split their multimedia division and the cable channel. In fact, the Weather Channel getting so desperate, I guess they just took a sponsorship from the Jonas Brothers, right, on this new storm, isn't it? And wow, you guys watching this, and this is kind of a historic storm going on. I've just been looking over at the Allison House stream, radar scope over there. That's amazing. I guess they're shutting everything down in the Northeast. So thanks for sticking around and listening to this presentation. Everybody online streaming right now, it's really cool that you can be a part of this and be where you are. So that's really cool as well. All right, what else you guys want to talk about? Let's see here. I'll just start going through my graphics in my brain and figure out where we're going, and then we'll just catch up. Okay, so welcome to ChaserCon. As we look and think about I have it on my phone here so I can take some of my notes. Obviously, the media is being consolidated, and it's very different than it has been in the past, and it's going to continue to change. Oklahoma City demographics, this is market 43. Okay, what does that mean? Well, traditional markets are from 1 to 212. 212 is there's 9 people, I think, that are in that market. Maybe a little bit more than that. Oklahoma City households are 701,000 households. Now, that's actually down from previous years because Nielsen is saying, well, there are some cord cutters. Some folks have abandoned traditional media and are more about the content that is on demand. And as 701,000 households, there are about 1 million total people in the Oklahoma City market that can watch. If you give it a ratio, about 1.5 people per household with 701,000. And so not everybody watches all at one time, but as we'll go through some of the research here in just a minute and focus on how many folks watched on, let's see, Wednesday, April 29th, Wednesday, May 6th, and Wednesday, May 13th, with 3 separate weather days. And what is the difference between the 3? What's the latest snowfall total? Anybody know? I know we checked earlier. What's D.C. at? What is it? Brooklyn with 21 inches. 40? 40. Where's the 40? Okay, so 40 inches. I know Snowshoe was probably going to do pretty well. Okay, yeah, hey, they got the presentation going up now. Great. Okay, so 40 inches, that's incredible. So yeah, and some wind. So I mean, they're going to be dealing with that wind all night long. It's going to be amazing just to be able to say, hey, I was at ChaserCon with such a huge storm that was going out there. Okay, looks like. So yeah, massive viewing audience. I will show you through the research is only going to get bigger as we make our way through the, do I need a clicker or something, or just wave at it? Oh, okay. We'll get it all going here. I think Elvis walked off with a clicker. That is the best storm report I've ever had from Elvis. Just yell. Okay, I'll just point. Okay, hey, here you go. Look, guys, I don't know what is with all the lizards. But yeah, maybe this is, Gary England did this, right? The 850-pound lizard that he had. You guys don't know that story? Maybe he'll tell it. He's got some great stories. He's so amazing. So yeah, there's that. And then, I guess the Washington Post is calling it something else with Godzilla lizard. What is it? You guys don't know. The Zilla blizzard or something. I don't know. I guess the lizard theme is going on. So here, we've got something. We're going to get this going. All right. I'll stop rambling here. We'll get to actual information. So yeah, you hear about, is it the death of TV? Is it over with? Well, now with apps, the user has complete control. People are watching their content when they want it, on demand. And, I pitched this to management recently. Hey, just tap that app. Something easy, tap that app. I haven't heard back. I thought it was catchy, though. So there's the Oklahoma City market to Texas, to Kansas, some of southern Oklahoma. There are a little more than 1 million viewers as we were talking. Okay, so here we go. We're up to speed now. 3 Wednesdays, April 29th, May 6th, May 13th, comparing the 6 o'clock newscast. Now, you say, well, I thought there were more than 3 stations. There are. There is Fox. They do a great job. But they don't have a 6 o'clock broadcast, so I wasn't able to compare their research for this presentation. And I am limited on how much research I'm allowed to show because Nielsen is a company and they sell their numbers for lots and lots of money. And so I'm only able to show certain bits of the research. But on the 29th, Wednesday, 172,000 combined viewers. It was a sunny day at 75. A lot of folks, the lead for a newscast is weather. Folks want weather. It affects everybody. If the weather's great and there's no major news story, they may just sit on the patio and have a glass of tea. Okay, so let's talk about the 13th. 66 degrees, raining. There wasn't really severe weather in the Oklahoma City market, and that's that whole area we were talking. For the 6 o'clock broadcast, numbers went way up. 275,000 combined viewers between 5, 9, and 4, and that's just for the 30-minute broadcast. People wanting to know about the rain. How about May 6th? Well, the morning started off with an outlook of slight, so it didn't look all that impressive in the morning. There were some hints of, hey, there was pretty good photographs, lots of shear, but was the cap going to break? We've heard that before. Later on in the day, it went up to enhanced. It's May. Not that big of a deal. There were already bigger days. I mean, in March, you saw earlier, the moderate risk on March 25th, and EF2 and more. Not the way you want to start off a season. That was an early start. It was a long season in Oklahoma. Okay, so a lot of you targeted Kansas, 10% hatched. It's going to be, that's where I would go. But, yeah, I'm an Oklahoman. I'm not going to go very far from home. Maybe you just decided, hey, it's as Doswell would say, a gentleman's chase, right? It's the backyard. You're not going all that far. You'll be home for dinner. You're good to go. But this day, it was going to be big. So you could probably argue, we could probably talk to Greg that, maybe we could have had a higher risk. There were a lot of stinking tornadoes. It was a busy day. Kansas got nailed. Southern Nebraska, lots of tornadoes. Oklahoma City, man, it was a busy evening. You can play this. This is a radar loop of 2 storms that came through back to back up the tornado turnpike, as I call it. It may play, it may not. So 2 major supercells, one right behind the other, starting in the afternoon. These storms, I don't know if it'll play. Don't worry about it. Okay, so 16 tornadoes in the Oklahoma City viewing area. 2 rain-wrapped EF3s right during the evening commute. It's not what we want. Amazingly, there were no fatalities. There were some injuries, but thankfully, it's amazing. Nobody was killed. Very thankful of that. But the audience... there were 638,000 combined viewers. Again, the maximum is 1 million. You may say, why didn't you pick May 20th of 2013 and compare those? Well, that was 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of folks were at work. And, of course, you pick an opportunity where the traditional broadcast viewers can watch. And that's what these Nielsen numbers represent. So if you look at the comparison... April 29th, the sunny day. May 13th, the rainy day. May 6th, the tornado day. A lot more. And how about the Super Bowl? The 2015 Super Bowl had a little over 500,000 viewers in the Oklahoma City market, but the tornado coverage beat the Super Bowl. There really isn't anything more that folks would watch. I mean, they have parties for this. So that was... It's true. Folks turn on the TV. That's what you're programmed to do. You move to Oklahoma, people say, I don't know what to do. You turn on the TV. This is what you do. It's what's been programmed into so many. But we talked earlier about those cord cutters. There is a lot of takeaway from this. I think this opened up an amazing dialogue. Yes, there were some frustrated issues in the beginning. If you don't know the backstory, very popular Dick McGowan was, is that how you said? McGowan? He was chasing, reported a tornado. Amarillo, you know, I don't know the whole story there. I didn't talk to them about that, but for whatever reason, they said this isn't valid, when in fact it was a tornado. Dick wasn't too happy about it. Amarillo shut down because they're like, all right, we're the government. We have no voice. We can't say anything. Where's Rick Smith? Okay, so Rick's great. He's going to talk tomorrow. He's got some really good, insightful information. And Rick's not scared to say some things that you need to know. So where do we go with this? What's the best way? Because I think that's what this dialogue developed, was that do we tweet? Do we text? Do we call? If every one of us is all in the same storm, who's reporting? I don't think we all want to, because I think that's too much. If there is too much, I don't have the answers. Obviously, if we were to all call NWS Norman, this tornado, that wouldn't be a good idea either. So maybe some one of us create a list of all reputable chasers, distribute that to the weather services. Because we get a lot of junk, as I was saying earlier. And sometimes Amarillo, Weather Service, the media, trying to disseminate what is a accurate report and what is the 15-year-old boy in his basement is hard to do. So what is a way that we can break up that information? Media's future is strong. The need and demand for accurate, reliable weather information, especially during severe weather, because that's where everybody's watching, is more important today than ever before. Why? The demand is increasing, will continue to increase in a more connected world. Everyone has mobile, but it's not going to stop there. We're a generation of now. People aren't waiting around for that late news. They want it right now. Media is going to be all about whenever there is news. It's on the mold of traditional broadcast of where I'm watching the season finale of Lost, but Gary Lezak has to interrupt for a tornado warning. What does he do? He doesn't want to interrupt that, but he has to. So giving viewers an option to watch the warning if they're affected, or to watch their program. And yes, Netflix resolves that, but are folks getting the warning there? Push alerts on apps are great. The media can send those out and say, watch this. There's a tornado warning for you. IP-targeted warnings for folks where they are, and watching coverage based on where you are. So this is going to be big. 4K, this was just a little screen grab of my 4K download speed. 18 down, 8 up, but Verizon testing their 5G. I think the timeline on that is maybe deployed by 2020. It seems like a while away, but that's coming tomorrow. That would be gigabit mobile internet speed. You say, well, we can do a lot more than 4K with that. Processing power on that's going to be massive. I know you guys got a lot to work out with how to ingest that amount of data, but the future is unlimited with how to get your footage back to where you're broadcasting to, the station, your agent. A more connected world. This, you know what? Who went to CES? I know Sullivan was there. Do you like the fridge? I love that fridge. They wouldn't let you take a picture? Aha, there's a picture. Okay, well, I just think I found that on their website. But this is cool. It's a refrigerator that's got cameras inside of it. You can go to the store and open your phone. Am I out of butter? Am I out of milk? This got hammered on social media. People made fun of it, but I think it's genius. You know, a lot of times folks don't realize what they have until they get it. Now, this refrigerator is probably way too expensive, but it's going to have the ability to watch television. It's perfect. You got the box in your kitchen right now. All it does is cool your food, but you can start watching your storm video. People can watch your live stream from their refrigerator. What's next? Maybe the microwave? Yeah, I mean, it's just a dumb box that heats stuff. It's the opposite of the... So, what about... So there's this too. Now, this is going to put a lot more people staying single the rest of their life, but it's cool as heck. It is awesome. So Oculus, Microsoft HoloLens, if you haven't looked up some of the demos on this, it's going to blow your mind. What does it do? Well, yeah, it's not so sexy right now. It's going to get better, though, I think. I mean, 10, 20 years, it might look cooler. They'll fix that. So it basically will allow you to have a screen or a model of whatever you want to see wherever you want it. So, sure, screens everywhere, but now you can literally make your TV a little bigger by pinching in the air, watching storm coverage. The need and demand. So, screens are coming. Everyone's going to be connected like crazy. They already are, but it's going to continue to grow. So, in summary, demand for storm content is increasing. Every newscast, network news, leads with weather. They stay on weather. Even with this blizzard where we're 1,500 miles away, they're still going to have the heck out of it on your evening news, your national news. People want to know. Your accuracy, your credibility is more important today than it's ever been before. That's really your game. That is your brand. You got to separate yourself from those who just throw out junk. We need the accurate reports. The National Weather Service, the media. Very, very important. Thank you. This has been great. Anybody have any questions? Okay, everybody's getting hungry. What are we supposed to do? Just like run? We got to leave the room, right? We got to evacuate. So no questions? Everybody good? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brad. Hey, folks, real quick, for those of you who have vehicles in the vehicle contest, I need you to go out to your cars now. Elvis Marshall is going to be out there judging as soon as you're out there. And if anybody else wants to go out there and watch it, you're by all means welcome to. Otherwise, we'll see you all here about 6 o'clock.
The average stroke of lightning is 6 to 10 miles long. You are always in danger from approaching storms, even with clear skies overhead. The Earth receives more than 8 million lightning strikes per day. This number is increasing with global warming. Any storm within 8 miles can reach you with a lightning strike. Squall lines are moving storm fronts that can be hundreds of miles in length and move at speeds of 50 miles per hour. Tornadoes develop quickly and without warning in small areas of a squall line as it moves. Nimbus 4. Get yours before the storm.